Chapter 408, A Rendezvous. CM Jiang Yongkang looked up and realized that there were 3 women in the carriage. He immediately felt embarrassed. "You're all here. Forget it." Shen Sitian asked, "Uncle Jiang, are you going to town?" Jiang Yongkang nodded and smiled gently. "I haven't been back for a long time. I'm going back to see my grandson with some dried mushrooms for them. I dried them myself." He patted the bag on his body. "Then come up. We're going to town too." They'd gotten his help last time. Could it be that they were unwilling to even give him a ride? This isn't a good idea. Tong Shuitao didn't like his hesitation and said, "What's the matter? You could just sit outside with my grandfather." Madame Yang also nodded. Jiang Yongkang thanked him and got into the carriage. Father Tong chuckled. "Hold on tight." The carriage set off again. However, the 3 people in the carriage who were originally chatting happily could not say anything because there was an unfamiliar man outside. Jiang Yongkang was also very quiet. Occasionally, he would talk to Father Tong in a low voice. The carriage arrived in town not long after. Jiang Yongkang bade them farewell and left with his bag. Father Tong had been to this town a few times and knew where there was a cloth shop. He immediately rode the carriage to the largest cloth shop. Tong Shuitao accompanied Madame Yang and Shun Sitian in. Father Tong found a place to park the carriage and waited for them. After an unknown period of time, he finally saw the 3 of them coming out from afar. However, compared to their expressions when they entered, the 3 of them had very ugly expressions. His granddaughter clenched her fists and looked like she was about to hit someone. Father Tong hurriedly went forward. Before he could ask, he heard Tong Shuitao's indignant voice. "She's too much of a bully." Seeing that we're strangers, she kept lowering the price. 5 copper coins per piece. We even used our own embroidery thread and fabric. How shameless of her. Father Tong quickly asked what happened. Tong Shuitao said, "The lady boss of that cloth shop is a good-for-nothing. At first, when she saw that we were dressed well, she thought that we were going to buy things. In the end, when we asked her if she wanted embroidered handkerchiefs, her expression changed on the spot. When she saw Miss Shun's handkerchief, she kept despising it and only gave us 5 copper coins. It was as if she was dismissing a beggar." Father Tong couldn't help but frown. Although he didn't know much about this, he heard from his wife and Aunt Ke that Miss Shun's embroidery work was something that few people could compare to. Anyone who knew a little about the market would pay at least 20 copper coins for a handkerchief. "I know another cloth shop. Why don't we go there and take a look?" Shen Sitian nodded. "Yes, let's take a look at more shops. We can compare them." The 3 of them walked in the direction of the carriage. Father Tong could not help but say, "Actually, the town can't compare to the county city. Why don't you go to the county city and ask?" Shen Sitian held her forehead. "At that time, I thought that since the town was close, I could just walk over myself. I didn't want to trouble Father Tong to bring me over. Who knew that when Yundong heard that I was coming over, she would ask you to drive me?" She didn't expect Madame Yang to follow too. "How is this troublesome? I have to send the 2 young masters to school every day. It's by the way." Shen Sitian shook her head. "Yunshu and Yuanji went early. You went in as soon as the city gate opened. You came back immediately after sending them off. I heard that most of the cloth shops in the county weren't open at that time. How could I make you wait?" Chapter 409, Madame Yang is unhappy Zenville. When Father Tong heard this, he could not help but rub his head. He chuckled and did not know how to answer. At this moment, a voice suddenly sounded from behind. "Father Tong, why are you here?" The few of them turned around. Whoa, wasn't this Jiang Yongkang who had just left not long ago? Father Tong was also surprised. "Why are you here?" "My house is over there." Jiang Yongkang pointed to an alley not far away. "I just went home and put my things down. I'm going to buy some vegetables to cook. Do you want to come to my house?" "No." Shen Sitian rejected him. "We still have to find a cloth shop." "Cloth shop?" Jiang Yongkang was stunned for a moment, but he quickly reacted. "You want to buy cloth? I think there's only Qian's clothing shop nearby. However, that shop looks big, but it doesn't have a good reputation in our area. It's best to change to another shop." Tong Shuitao's eyes lit up. "That's right. Uncle Jiang, You're very familiar with this town. Do you know which cloth shop accepts embroidery work at a fair price? Yongkang smiled. There really is one. They'll bring you there. There's no need. You still have to buy groceries. Just point us in the right direction and we'll go ourselves. Yongkang said, It's not far. The market I'm going to is also there. Let's go and not waste any more time. As he spoke, he suddenly paused and looked at Father Tong. It's just that it's not easy to ride this carriage over. The road is narrow, and it's easy for the carriage to bump into the small stalls by the roadside. Tong Shuitao waved her hand. Then wait for us here. Father Tong could only stay behind and continue watching the carriage. The cloth shop that Yongkang mentioned was indeed not far. It was just 2 alleys away. The cloth shop was clean and tidy. Although the size of the shop was not as big as the previous one, the boss' smiling attitude was quite good. When he saw the embroidery handkerchief Shen Sitian took out, his eyes lit up. This embroidery is good. Did you embroider it? After Shen Sitian nodded, the boss was even happier. He bought the embroidered handkerchiefs for 30 copper coins apiece. This was considered a high price in the town. It was higher than Shen Sitian had expected. She had embroidered 10 handkerchiefs and earned 300 copper coins. She was still a little excited. After that, the boss took out an embroidery drawing and asked her if she could embroider it. Shen Sitian did not expect to receive embroidery work. She looked at the picture carefully and immediately agreed. The boss said that if she could finish the embroidery in half a month, he would give her 1 tael of silver directly. Moreover, he would give her the fabric and thread. Before Shen Sitian could say anything, Tong Shuitao's eyes lit up. 1 tael of silver for half a month, 2 taels of silver a month. So embroidery was so profitable. Shen Sitian agreed and looked at Madame Yang. Auntie, where's your embroidery handkerchief? The boss was stunned. He looked at the woman who had been silent, but looked to be the best dressed among the 3 of them. Madame Yang took out the embroidered handkerchief shakily and said, 30 copper coins. The boss was speechless. Although this embroidery was not bad, his eyes were sharp. With one look, he knew that it was done by someone new. It was not worth 30 copper coins at all. How about this? I'll give you a total of 30 copper coins for 2 handkerchiefs, okay? Madame Yang immediately took the handkerchief back with an unhappy expression. Seeing this, Shen Sitian quickly gave the boss a look. In a place where Madame Yang could not see, she secretly gave the boss 30 copper coins. The boss could also tell that Madame Yang was different from ordinary people. At first, he thought that this lady wanted to take advantage of him. He accepted Shen Sitian's 30 copper coins and immediately said to Madame Yang, I was wrong. This handkerchief is 30 copper coins apiece. I'll pay you now. Chapter 4:10. Don't disclose your wealths and vel. See, Madame Yang looked up and was indeed happy. She happily took the copper coins and counted them one by one. The boss didn't chase her away. He even thought that this person was quite interesting. It seemed that her family also indulged her. In this world, many people with bad brains are despised by their families. This madam was already very happy. Shen Sitian and Tong Shuitao looked at each other and did not say anything. After Madame Yang finished counting, the 3 of them left the cloth shop. Unexpectedly, after walking out of the door, she saw Yongkang still standing there waiting for them. Shen Sitian said, Uncle Jiang, you don't have to wait for us. It's not troublesome. It's still early anyway. How is it? Did it go smoothly? It went well. I have to thank Uncle Jiang. Otherwise, I really wouldn't have been able to find this shop. Yongkang waved his hand. You're too kind. You even gave me a ride. Otherwise, I'd still be traveling and tiring myself to death. Where else do you want to go? I can take you there. Shen Sitian was about to refuse when Madame Yang said, I want to buy something. Buy what? Yongkang treated her like a child. He was very patient with her and even smiled. Madame Yang counted with her fingers. Pancakes for Kiki. Brush holder for Yunshu and Yuanji. Comb and for Dongdong. That's all. Tong Shuitao choked. But madam, you don't seem to have enough copper coins. Although these items could be bought at stall, there were 2 brush holders among them. It was hard to say. 60 copper coins seemed to be a lot, but it was not enough to buy everything. Unexpectedly, Madame Yang raised her eyebrows proudly and suddenly took out a money bag. She shook it slightly. "I have it. There's silver inside." The few people standing beside her could clearly hear the sound of silver pieces swaying inside. Yongkang hurriedly said, "Quickly put away the money bag. Don't reveal your wealth, lest you're targeted." When Shun Sitian heard this, she immediately pressed down Madame Yang's hand and said, "Then let's go buy something first. We'll go back early after we're done." Okay. Madame Yang was very happy. Her money was naturally given to her by Yundong. She would return what Yundong gave her in the past and ask her daughter to keep it safe for her. However, ever since she returned from her trip, she would occasionally keep the silver behind. Actually, Madame Yang didn't know how much she needed. She felt that she had saved enough, so she wanted to buy things for the children. Now that Shin Sitian and Tong Shueitao did not object, she should have enough money. She looked around the stalls by the roadside. The pastries and comb were easy to buy, and it didn't take long. Brush holders were different. Usually, such things were sold in bookstores. Of course, there were also some in the stalls outside, but most of them were made of bamboo. They were not particular about carving skills, like bamboo joints placed there. Madame Yang didn't understand at first. When people said that this was a brush holder, she planned to pay for it. However, how could Shin Sitian and Tong Shueitao allow her to be treated like a fool? They could just let Boss Tong cut her into 2 pieces of bamboo later. They asked Jiang Yongkang, who had been following them, and brought Madame Yang to the bookstore. Sure enough, she saw the brush holders in the bookstore that matched her thoughts. They were just expensive. In this day and age, scholars' things were expensive, but Madame Yang was very satisfied. She put everything away in a cloth bag and came out of the bookstore. "Let's go home. Dong, Yunshu, Kiki, and Yuanji would definitely be very happy to see the gifts." Just as she was thinking this, their path forward was suddenly blocked. Chapter 411. Call for help? Beat them up, Vel. Sia Madame Yang looked up and met a pair of greedy eyes. That person stared at Madame Yang's hand and smiled. "She looks like a fat sheep." As soon as he said that, 4 or 5 people around him laughed. The few of them slowly approached them. Shun Sitian immediately shielded Madame Yang behind her and cursed in her heart. It seemed that these people had seen the money bag Madame Yang took out. As expected, one should not reveal their wealth. Jiang Yongkang took a step forward and made Shun Sitian retreat as well. He stood in front of the 3 women. "I'm from town after all. He'll talk to them." His gaze became sharp as he met the eyes of those sloppy people. He said, "You want to rob me in broad daylight? My home is in this town. There are many familiar families nearby. As long as I shout, everyone will come out to help me. At that time, they'll send you straight to the police office. You won't end well." The few of them looked at each other, but the leader looked unconvinced. "Who are you trying to scare? I've been following you for a long time. I could tell at a glance that you're not from this town. Otherwise, why would you have to ask someone to find a bookstore?" "They're not, but I am." The leader sneered. "All right, then shout." As he spoke, he rushed over. Jiang Yongkang was about to open his mouth when a gust of wind suddenly flashed behind him. He was stunned for a moment. When he took a closer look, he saw that Tong Shueitao had already stood in front of him. "Miss Tong, don't be afraid. I can call for help." "What are you calling for help? Just beat them up." Tong Shueitao grabbed the wrist that had rushed in front of her and bent it down fiercely. She kicked his stomach and directly sent him flying. The few people who rushed over from behind were stunned. They looked at this woman who was not even as tall as their shoulders in disbelief. However, Tong Shueitao did not give them a chance to react at all. They did not dare to attack, so she charged at them herself. She was strong to begin with. Now that she had learned from the bodyguard for a few days, the effect was immediate. The escort said that she was very talented. If not for the fact that she hadn't learned martial arts sooner, she might have become an expert. However, she was not bad now. At least, she was better than Mao and the others. She stimulated Mao and the others to train day and night. They were afraid that it would be too embarrassing for her to left them far behind. Now that she was facing such lowly people, they were beaten up effortlessly. This was also the reason why Yundong was assured to let Madame Yang go out. With Tong Shuitao accompanying her, safety could be guaranteed in such a small town. Looking at the hooligans lying on the ground moaning, Tong Shuitao was disdainful. "You're so weak that you're a burden to me, even if I use you as sandbags. How dare you try to rob me? You woman." The gangster's hand was almost broken. He was in so much pain that he couldn't speak. Tong Shuitao pressed a foot on his chest. "What do you want to say? Tell me, I'm listening." As she spoke, she exerted force. The hoodlum couldn't breathe, and his eyes began to turn white. Shin saw that there were more and more people watching the commotion and quickly pulled her back. "Let's go. Your grandfather is waiting." Tong Shuitao nodded and ran to Madame Yang's side, looking like she was protecting her. Shin looked down at the person on the ground and secretly clicked her tongue, as expected of Yundong's disciple. The master and servant's personalities were becoming more and more similar. She shook her head and quickly followed Madame Yang. After walking for a while, she realized that Yongkang was not following them. Chapter 412. Like a mother's unveil. Shin turned around and saw that the person was still dumbfounded. She turned back. Uncle Jiang Yongkang suddenly came back to his senses and blinked blankly. What's wrong? Let's go back." "Oh." Jiang Yongkang nodded and followed. After taking a few steps, he couldn't help but look back at the people who were still moaning on the ground. He had heard that Miss Gus' maidservant was very strong, but he did not expect her to be so strong. To think that he had been so eager to convince the other party just now so that he wouldn't suffer a loss. When they reached the carriage, they saw Father Tong waiting anxiously. When he saw them coming over, he asked curiously, "What took you so long? I almost want to look for you." "We bought some things." Shin did not mention that they had encountered hooligans, lest he worry. When Jiang Yongkang saw them get into the carriage, he said goodbye. "You guys can go back. I'm going home with groceries too." Tong Shuitao asked him softly, "Uncle Jiang, if you stay in this town, what if those hooligans find trouble with you again?" "Don't worry, they'll just stay at home for a day. They'll return to Yongfu village tomorrow. Besides, I've lived in town for so many years. I really know my neighbors. When the time comes, I can just shout and someone will help me. You guys can go back." Only then did Tong Shuitao relax and crawl back into the carriage. In the group, only Madame Yang's expression did not change much. After all, when they escaped from the famine back then, she had encountered many such robbers. Dong could deal with them in a few moves. Dong was not by her side today, and she panicked at first. However, when she saw Tong Shuitao attack, looking no different from Dong, she was relieved. At this moment, she was still holding the few things she had just bought preciously. When she reached home, she did not see Yundong. She only saw Yunka pouncing at her. She could not wait to give her the pastry. "Kiki eat." The little girl was stunned for a moment, and her eyes lit up. "Mother, did you buy it for me?" Madame Yang nodded and held her hand as they walked in. Yunshu and Yuanji were indeed in the study, reading quietly and obediently. Madame Yang dug around in the bag and took out the brush holders. "Here." The two little guys were stunned. They looked at the exquisite brush holders and could not recover for a moment. Madame Yang tilted her head and asked with a frown, "You don't like it?" "I like it, of course I like it." The two of them hurriedly nodded and reached out to take the brush holders. Yunshu's eyes were a little red. He went over and hugged Madame Yang's waist. "Mother, you're the best." He could feel that ever since his mother came back, her illness did not seem to be as serious as before. She was becoming more and more like a mother. Madame Yang chuckled and quickly let go of him to look for Yundong. Only the comb was left. Coincidentally, Yundong had just returned from the workshop. Everyone had come to work today, so she assigned the jobs first. She planned to arrange the work in the form of an assembly line. Each person would be in charge of a portion. This way, it would be more efficient and the method would not be leaked. However, just as she returned from her work, Tong Shuitao came over and told her about meeting hooligans in town. Yundong's expression changed slightly. Without another word, she immediately walked in. Worried, she went to look for Madame Yang to see if she was injured. Tong Shuitao opened her mouth. There was actually something she didn't say. Chapter 413. Warm and lively Zinvel. Although 30 copper coins was not much for the current miss, it did not seem good for Miss Shun to give it to Madame for nothing. But on the way back, Shun Sitian reminded her not to tell anyone. She had been eating and living in the Gu house for so long, and Gu Yundong had only accepted a small amount of accommodation fees from her. She already felt bad. There was no need to mention the 30 copper coins. Although Tong Shuitao understood, she was still very conflicted. After all, she was the young Miss maidservant. No matter how small the matter was, she should tell the young miss. Over the past few days, she had been practicing martial arts at the Shao family's house. Her future master-in-law often reminded them of this. Thinking of this, Tong Shuitao suddenly became determined and immediately ran in. Gu Yundong was holding the comb that Madame Yang had given her and smiling. She had naturally noticed the problem that Gu Yunshu had discovered long ago. Although Song Dajiang had not completely cured Madame Yang, Madame Yang's situation was indeed developing in a good direction after the last treatment. Now, she actually knew how to buy gifts for everyone. Moreover, the gifts were considerate. She did not know how long her mother had been thinking about it. Gu Yundong cherished the comb and put it away. Only then did she look up and meet Madame Yang's gaze that was begging for praise. Did mother embroider the handkerchiefs just to buy these? Madame Yang nodded vigorously. I'm your mother. Gu Yundong held her hand. Yes, mother is great. You've worked so hard. I'll cook tonight and make delicious food for you, okay? Gu Yunka, who was offering a bite of the pastry to his brother, immediately turned around and ran over. I'll cook too. I know how to do it. Aunt said that Kiki is very capable. Gu Yundong patted her head. All right, let's do it together. Ever since she bought the Tong family, almost every meal was cooked by the Tong family's mother-in-law and daughter-in-law. Gu Yundong had not cooked for a long time. Since she was happy today, she washed her hands early and kneaded the dough. The little girl was also kneading the dough at the side and crushing the small doughs one by one. With the flour on her face, she looked exceptionally soft and cute. Her mother said that she wanted to eat dumplings, so they would make dumplings today. Although Gu Yunka didn't know how to make dumplings yet, she could still put the vegetables and meat into the covers. Not only did Gu Yundong prepare dumplings, but she also prepared noodles and Shao Qingyuan's favorite egg fried rice. Anyway, there were many people, so it would be lively to eat together. Tong Shuitao had told Gu Yundong about the 30 copper coins, but she did not intend to return the money to Shun Sitian if she could live comfortably in the Gu family. The whole family was bustling as if it was a festive occasion. Mao and the others had even drunk alcohol. When they returned, they were a little drunk. Therefore, they woke up late the next day and did not make in time to practice martial arts. When they got up, the four of them trembled when they saw Shao Qingyuan's expressionless face. Fortunately, Tong Shuitao came over to say that Big Qian and the others had returned and had even brought back 2 large carts of fruits. Mao and the others hurriedly jumped up and said that they wanted to make up for their mistakes and help unload the fruits. Shao Qingyuan snorted and didn't say anything, but he went to help himself. Big Qian and the others had indeed arrived at the entrance of the village. At this moment, many villagers had surrounded them. Looking at the large cart of loquats, they actually felt their mouths water and could not help but swallow their saliva. Some people who were rich couldn't help but want to buy some back. Big Qian and was a little worried that these people would come and snatch the fruits. Shao Qingyuan and the others came over at this time. Tong Shuitao ran straight to Boss Tong's side. Seeing that he was travel-worn, she said, "Father, you're back." Shao Qingyuan didn't see Lu Wei and asked Big Qian. Chapter 414. Sneaky Zinvel. See him unexpectedly. The corners of Big Qian's mouth twitched as he said, "Young Master Lu bought 2 big boxes himself and brought them home first." Shao Qingyuan was speechless. So this was the reason why he was so enthusiastic about collecting the fruits? Shaking his head, He asked Mao and the others to help push the fruits back. Tong Shueitao was strong and immediately went to the head of the carriage. Unexpectedly, just as she walked around her father, she saw a few figures hiding not far away. She narrowed her eyes and almost cried out. Seeing that she did not move for a long time, Tong Ping could not help but push her. What? You can't move it? Then let me tell you. You have to be careful of this carriage. Otherwise, it will easily overturn. You're inexperienced, so give it to me. No, father, I'm just... Tong Shueitao wanted to say something, but it was useless to tell her father about this. She simply let go and handed the carriage back to her father. Seeing Mao coming over to push the cart, she immediately said in a low voice, "Didn't I tell you yesterday that I met a few hooligans in town who wanted to rob Madam? I saw them again just now." Mao was shocked. "Where are they?" "They're over there. They're mixed in with the crowd. Do you think they want to take revenge, so they found out where our house is and want to take the opportunity to harm Madam? Do they dare?" Mao sneered. He thought for a moment and ran to Shao Qingyuan's side. "Young master, those bastards are over there. Can we teach them a lesson?" Shao Qingyuan nodded. "Yes, sure." Mao smiled. Very good. He had finally found a live target after practicing martial arts for so many days. He turned around and called Go over. He told Shu and Zhu to continue working. It was just teaching a few hooligans a lesson. He and Go were enough. However, Tong Shueitao also wanted to follow them, afraid that they would attack the wrong person. Besides, she could actually handle it alone. She didn't need Mao and Go to follow her. Mao was still a little unconvinced. Why did she make it sound like they were stupid? The fruits were pulled away, and the villagers followed along. The hooligans in the crowd followed a few steps and walked in another direction when no one was paying attention. Mao and the other two snorted and followed behind silently. When they arrived at a remote and uninhabited place, the three of them instantly ran forward and surrounded them. The hooligans were still a little confused. They looked at Mao, who was standing at the front, in confusion. They frowned and shouted, "What are you doing? Do you want to fight? What are you talking about?" Tong Shueitao walked over from behind and looked at them with disdain. As soon as they saw her, the hooligans immediately understood, and a trace of fear flashed across their faces. The next moment, they turned around and ran. They were smart enough to split up out. However, Mao had brought Go along. 3 people against 6 people, 2 each. "Tell me, why did you come to our village? Are you trying to take revenge on me?" Tong Shueitao asked. The hooligan leader shook his head like a rattle drum. No, we were just passing by. Do you think you're a fool? Or do you think we're fools?" Mao slapped his head hard. "Tell me the truth, or he'll hit you. I really didn't want to take revenge. You guys are so powerful. Do we dare? We just saw that there were a lot of fruits shipped over and wanted to steal some." The others quickly nodded. Mao sneered. "If you want to steal the fruits, you should have followed the carriages. Why did you run out alone?" Tong Shueitao said, "I think they're here to take revenge on us. When we left yesterday, you guys even glared at us. Your gazes were fierce. There must be a conspiracy. Then let's fight." Chapter 415. Someone instigated us in Vel. The few of them started beating the hooligans up without saying a word. They even specially hit the places that hurt. The few hooligans immediately wailed like ghosts and howled like wolves. They covered their heads and fled. Stop! We really don't want to take revenge." No one listened, and they still attacked without hesitation. "We're here to find someone." Tong Shueitao snorted coldly. "I know. You came to look for us, but you still said that you didn't come to find trouble with us. You were beaten up by me yesterday. Did you really want to get back and snatch some money back?" No. We didn't want to rob at all. We just took their money to put on a show. It was unknown which hooligan couldn't take it anymore and shouted, "Shut up and stop talking nonsense." Tong Shueitao, Mao, and Go stopped what they were doing at the same time. They looked at the person who had let it slip. Their eyes were still glowing with danger. The hooligans immediately felt their hair stand on end, as if the 3 of them were much more terrifying than before. Mao covered the boss' mouth and dragged him to the side. Ago and Tong Shueitao blocked the rascal who had let the cat out of the bag and asked with a bloody expression, "You took someone's money and pretended to rob us, right? Tell me, who paid you?" The leader of the hooligans was whimpering when Mao punched him so hard that he vomited. This scene frightened the gangster so much that he didn't hesitate at all. He confessed while trembling, "It's that Jiang guy. The man who was with you yesterday, really. Otherwise, why would we come to Yongfu village? It's all because we were beaten up yesterday. In the end, we didn't see him at his house, so we came to Yongfu village to find him." Tong Shueitao was stunned. She looked at the sincere hooligan in shock. "Are you serious?" "Yes, absolutely." That person nodded hurriedly. Tong Shueitao frowned, feeling that it was unbelievable. Jiang Yongkang looked very refined. When he spoke to them, he had always been soft-spoken and patient. If it did not know his family situation, anyone who saw him for the first time would think that he was a scholar or a teacher. Although Tong Shueitao did not like people who spoke gently, she still felt that the other party was a very good and friendly person. But now, someone was telling her that this person had colluded with hooligans to rob them. She looked at the hooligan. "Why would he do that? How would I know?" The hooligan wanted to cry. "He wants us to block your way and wait for him to call for help. Then we'll run away in fear. That's all." The cats and dogs looked at each other. Was he trying to save the damsel in distress? "Three heroes, I've said everything I know. Can you let us go? We really didn't want to take revenge on you. We can't take revenge on you all." After witnessing Tong Shueitao's martial arts, no matter how ignorant they wouldn't rush to find trouble. Wasn't this asking for death? Tong Shueitao frowned and kicked his butt. Get lost, get lost. Don't let me see you again, or you'll be unlucky." The few of them hurriedly stood up and helped the boss, who had vomited until his face was pale, run away. "What does that Jiang guy mean?" Ago asked. "I'm out of know either." He glanced in Jiang Yongkang's direction and said, "Let's go back first and ask Miss and young master how to deal with this." The two of them nodded and quickly ran towards the Gu family. Chapter 416. Why did you do this, Envel? CM Gu Yundong was still in the workshop when the loquats arrived. Those things were not easy to keep fresh, so they had to be made in a dried loquat sauce and loquats. The assignment of the workers had already been explained the day before. Now everyone was in their positions. They washed the fruits, tore off the skins, removed the cores, dried them, and steamed them. Everyone was busy. The clay pots that Gu Yundong had asked Shao Qingyuan to order 2 days ago had arrived early this morning. There were already hundreds of clay pots. When the time came, these clay pots would be packed with gauze, grass cakes, bamboo leaves, mud, and other meticulous seals. They would be food in ancient times. She even got the family who made the clay pots to carve Gus at the bottom of the clay pot. She had specially asked Yunshu to ask Qin Wenzheng for the word Gus. The handwriting was strong and unique, so it was really difficult to fake. When she sold the cans later, she could still recycle the containers. She could get the customers to wash them clean and return them. Then, she could refund them for 5 copper coins or something. She had to use them sparingly. As she thought about it, she brought Tong and a look at them one by one. If she encountered any problems, she would stop and say a few words. The workshop was in full swing. Gu Yundong spent almost the entire day there. She wasn't the only one. Shao Qingyuan, Shu, Zhu, the Tong family, and Shun Sitian were all helping. It was almost evening before the group returned. Unexpectedly, as soon as they entered the house, Aunt Ku said, "Let's go to the central room first. Shueitao has something to tell you." Gu Yundong was slightly taken aback. Seeing the serious look on Aunt K's face, she felt that it was not a small matter. "Why didn't she look for me at the workshop?" I stopped her. "It's your first day of work, so there are a lot of things to do. It's not a serious matter. If she meets you, ITLL caused trouble for you. She could talk to you when you come back. Why did you look like that if it wasn't something serious?" Gu Yundong was very puzzled. As soon as they entered the house, Tong Shueitao immediately stood up. "Mississippi." Gu Yundong took the water from Shao Qingyan and gulped down 2 mouthfuls before sitting down. "Tell me, what is it?" Tong Shueitao told her everything in detail. Shen Sitian was the most surprised. She found it unbelievable. Did Uncle Jiang really pay them? Tong Shueitao nodded, then felt a little vexed. I was too shocked at that time, so I let those hooligans go and said that we should bring them back. That way, we will have witnesses. She was too impulsive. Mao and Ah Go were also idiots. They had not thought of this. But why would he do that? Shen Sitian thought of Jiang Yongkang, who had been laughing and helping them enthusiastically yesterday. She felt that it was difficult to combine him with the person who had paid the hooligans to rob her. Yundong frowned. Could it be that he saw that the Gu family is rich and deliberately acted this way, so that we would be grateful to him? Does he have a favor to ask of us? It was not that she was narcissistic, but there were indeed many people eyeing the Gu family now. Yundong had met many people who wanted to build a relationship with the Gu family, including the wealthy families in the county. Tong Shueitao also felt that it was possible. Does he want to work in our workshop? But he's afraid that our family won't hire him, so he might as well use this method. Perhaps this way, he could become a small manager and earn more money, right? Anka couldn't help but roll her eyes. These two people were really... Can you guys think simpler? Can it be because he took a fancy to someone? Chapter 417. Jiang Yongkang is here's and vel. CM Gu Yundong and Tong Shueitao looked up at the same time. Who is it? Aunt Ku pouted to the side. Everyone followed her gaze and looked at Shen Sitian. Shen Sitian was also stunned. She pointed at her nose. Me? How is that possible? Why not? Isn't saving a damsel in distress usually for the sake of the beauty? Think about it. Didn't he help you the last time by the river? He was also the one who pointed you in the right direction when you went to town to sell embroidery. He even accompanied you all the way to finish everything. Anka spoke with great experience. Shen Sitian still found it unbelievable. But Auntie and Shueitao were with me yesterday. Why couldn't he have taken a fancy to them? Shueitao is just a little girl who hasn't grown up yet. She's still heartless and slow when it comes to relationships. What Aunt Ku did not say was that she was now a servant. Even if Jiang Yukong had taken a fancy to her, he should not have made his presence known in front of Gu Yundong. It was more appropriate to ask Gu Yundong for her. Tong Shueitao was still a little unconvinced when she heard this. What did Anka mean by she hadn't grown up yet? She was even a year older than Mississippi. However, on second thought, it was better for her not to grow up if Jiang Yongkang might take a fancy to her. Aunt Ku continued, As for your aunt, let's not talk about anything else. She's a married woman with children. Now, she's even more ignorant about relationships. Even if the hero who saves her in distress accidentally dies in front of her, she probably still doesn't understand what he wants to do. What he said made a lot of sense. However, Shen Sitian still felt that it was unlikely. But he already has a grandson. He's a generation older than me. For some reason, Shen Sitian felt a chill. Aunt Ku snorted coldly. It's precisely because he's old and feels that there's not much hope that he used such a method. She looked so confident that everyone actually thought that was the case. However, Shen Sitian wanted to cry. She had no feelings for Jiang Yongkang at all. I still don't believe it. Why don't we go and ask? Ow! Aunt Ku asked. Tong Shueitao was eager to give it a try. Let's fight it out. Let's not talk about anything else. Just yesterday, he colluded with a few hooligans to rob us. That's enough for us to come knocking on his door to reason with him. Her mother, Madame Jiang, couldn't help but reprimand her. Don't mess around. Why are you shouting about beating and killing all day long now? You have to have a reason to come knocking on his door. You've let those hooligans go. What if he doesn't admit it? Tong Shueitao was a little depressed. Madame Jiang glared at her again. Miss hasn't even said anything. Only then did everyone realize that Gu Yundong had been silent. Shao Qingyuan could not help but ask her, What are you thinking about? Gu Yundong pursed her lips. She was thinking about Aunt K's words. Actually, she had already found it strange when she saw Jiang Yongkang previously. According to Aunt Ku, before they returned to Yongfu village, she had only seen Jiang Yongkang twice in more than a month. However, they had only been back for a few days, but they bumped into him every other day. This was too frequent. especially since the Gu family was at the foot of the mountain and they had little contact with the other locals in the village. Moreover, he was very warm-hearted, and this warm-heartedness would not make people feel uncomfortable. It would make sense if he had taken a fancy to Shun Sitian. A thought suddenly flashed across Gu Yundong's mind, but it was too fast for her to grasp it. Just as she was about to think about it, Mao ran in and said to everyone, "Jiang Yongkang is here. He's just outside the door. Miss, should we let him in?" Chapter 418, Apologize and Vel. CM Gu Yundong sat up straight. "Let him in." When Jiang Yongkang came over, Madame Jiang, who was a servant, brought Tong Shui Tao out. Only Gu Yundong, Shao Qingyuan, and Shun Sitian were left in the central room. Even Aunt Ku had left. When Jiang Yongkang came in, his face was ashen and he looked a little haggard. After he entered, he glanced at Shun Sitian, whose expression changed slightly, and she clenched her fists tightly. "Sit." Gu Yundong pointed to a chair at the side. Jiang Yongkang smiled bitterly. She had stopped calling him Uncle Jiang. He lowered his head slightly, rubbed his hands, and said uneasily, "I want sit. I came here today to apologize to Miss Shun." Shin Sishin's expression was tense, and her voice turned colder. "What are you trying to say? I know I did something wrong yesterday. I shouldn't have asked those hooligans to scare you. As he spoke, he paused and took a deep breath. "It's just that since the first time I saw you, I've liked you. I know that I'm letting my imagination run wild. I'm already so old and have children and grandchildren. You won't like me. If I rashly propose marriage, I might be chased out. That's why I took a crooked path and thought of that method." Shin Sishin's expression turned even uglier. Looking at Jiang Yongkang at this moment, she inexplicably thought of Gu Gang. Even though Jiang Yongkang was much younger than Gu Gang, the feeling of being liked by her elders was simply terrible. As Jiang Yongkang spoke, he covered his face. After a while, he said, "I'm too ashamed to see you again. I came here today to apologize to you. You can punish me however you want." He bowed deeply and stood there with his head lowered, looking like he was letting Shin Sitian hit and scold him. Gu Yundong and Shao Qingyuan looked at each other and then at Shin Sitian. After all, this was her business, and Gu Yundong could not interfere too much. Shin Sitian only felt very annoyed. Her previous respect for Jiang Yongkang instantly disappeared. She stood up and said, "Please don't appear in front of me in the future." Jiang Yongkang looked up in shock. When he met Shun Sishin's rejecting gaze, his eyes darkened. After a long time, he said in a hoarse voice, "Okay." Then he apologized again, turned around, and strode away. However, Shun Sitian seemed to have run out of energy and fell back in her chair. "What's going on?" Aunt Ku came out of nowhere. She must hurt a lot. She walked to Shun Sishin's side and patted her shoulder. "You're good-looking and have a good personality. It's normal for someone to like you. It was just that this person was overestimating himself. He was simply a toad lusting after swan meat. How could a beautiful young lady take a fancy to an old uncle? I just feel uncomfortable." "I feel uncomfortable all over," Shin Sitian said weakly. "Then why did you let him off so easily?" Gu Yundong asked. "What else? Do you think I should beat him up?" She only wanted to draw the line between them quickly and did not want to pester him at all. Why not? It's good to kick him twice. It's not too much to teach him a lesson for what he did yesterday. Anyway, if it were her, Gu Yundong would have wanted to hit him. She suddenly thought of Shao Qingyuan. She narrowed her eyes and turned to look at him. Shao Qingyuan had actually been looking at her. Whenever Gu Yundong was present, his gaze was mostly on her. Therefore, when he saw her get up and go to the backyard, he followed her when no one was looking. Chapter 419. The two children want return to Dajiang. See him as soon as they reached the backyard. He couldn't help but hold her hand. It seemed that ever since they held hands last time, Shao Qingyuan would always think of ways to hold her hand. Gu Yundong looked down but did not take her hand back. She just glanced at him with a faint smile. I suddenly remembered something. "What is it?" Shao Qingyuan felt that her small hand was especially smooth and tender. Holding it made him feel satisfied, and he couldn't bear to part with it. Tell me, did you also play some tricks? For example, 3 wild boars turned into 2. You clearly had money, but you didn't eat well or wear good clothes. Did you deliberately appear in front of me frequently? Shao Qingyuan's face tightened, and he stopped kneading her hand. He looked up and met her raised eyebrows. His voice lowered slightly. That was a legitimate, small trick. Jiang Yongkang's was illegitimate. I didn't expect you to be such a scheming man. The corners of Shao Qingyuan's mouth tightened. You hate it. Hate it? Not really. She was even a little happy. This man, who had tried all means to attract her attention, had actually satisfied her little vanity. Yundong, you're a white lotus who is so pretentious after taking advantage of him. I despise you 10,000 times. After despising herself, Yundong threw the thought aside. Shao Qingyuan acutely sensed the change in her emotions, especially when he saw the corners of her mouth curl up slightly. He suddenly heaved a sigh of relief. He held her hand tightly and pulled her into his arms. Yundong's nose was instantly filled with his scent. She heard his low voice. I won't do anything that might hurt you. It was impossible to find some hooligans like Yongkang did to fulfill his dream of saving the damsel in distress. What if they scared her? Yundong's smile widened. Of course. Shao Qingyuan was many times better than Yongkang. Cough, cough. Suddenly, light coughs came from the side. Yundong and Shao Qingyuan turned around at the same time and saw Aunt Ku standing at the entrance of the courtyard with a look of disdain. You're not married yet. Control yourselves. Shao Qingyuan was a little angry. He had only hugged her for a while. Yundong suddenly hugged his waist tightly before letting go. Then, under Shao Qingyuan's smiling gaze, she looked at Aunt Ku and asked, What's the matter? Aunt Ku pointed at her and snorted. Father Tong is back. He said that Yunshu and Yuanji won't be back today. What is it? I think a classmate invited them over as guests. They'll stay for the night, Aunt Ku said. Actually, in the past 6 months, Yunshu has been to several of his classmates' houses. It's just that you hadn't returned yet. He hasn't invited his classmates to his place yet. I heard that it's Yunshu's birthday in a few days. Should we invite his classmates over as guests? Yundong was stunned. Birthday? Damn it. She had almost forgotten. Not only did she not remember Yunshu's birthday, but she also did not remember her own. In her previous life, she grew up in an orphanage and did not even know the exact date of her birth. The date on her identity card was random. Hence, she had never celebrated a birthday since she was young. Occasionally, when she saw those scenes on television, she would vaguely remember that there was such a day that belonged to her. If she had a sudden impulse, she would treat that day as her birthday and make a small cake to eat alone in the apartment. Now that she had a family in this life, birthday seemed to have become especially important. She recalled carefully and secretly heaved a sigh of relief. Fortunately, other than Yunshu, her family's birthdays were in the second half of the year. Chapter 420, New Goods in the Shops in Vel. CM, all right, let's wait for Yunshu's birthday. We'll invite his classmates to our house. Yundong was actually looking forward to it. In fact, Yunshu had not really celebrated his birthday. In the past, when she was an old Gus family, Madame Zhao always said that their family was poor. If so many people celebrated their birthdays, how much money would it cost? However, she had actually been secretly celebrating birthdays for the children of the second and third branches. Every time it was Gu Da's or Gu Da's children's birthday, they would be able to eat an egg. Their branch didn't have it, but Gu Dajiang remembered it. He would come back from the county city and buy 2 sweets for the children to eat. Even so, he would always be scolded by Madame Zhao. Therefore, a proper birthday celebration was a luxury for their branch. Now that they were in Yongfu village and had more money, Yundong naturally wanted to make up for what they did not have in the past. Therefore, the next day, she brought the newly made loquat cans to the county city. She went to the shop first. The business in the shop had stabilized, but it was still booming. The rich people in the county city had not given up on buying white sugar here before going to the Prefectural city to sell it, even though they could only buy 5 caddies a day. However, white sugar would not be the main product very soon. There would be all kinds of dried fruits and preserved jams. When Zhuangzi saw her coming over, he immediately greeted her with a smile. Yundong nodded slightly. Very good. Now, his smile no longer looked wretched. Shopkeeper Jiang, this is Qinloquat. The workshop has just started making it, so there's not many. There might be other canned fruits, or dried fruits, or fruit jam next. We have to find an opportunity to promote the new products. Think about it in the next 2 days and see how to make it effective. Yundong took out a can, opened it, and poured out the pulp for Yongkang and Zhuangzi to try. The two of them took a bite, and their eyes lit up. This is delicious. Delicious. Zhuangzi couldn't wait to take a second bite. Yundong patted his hand. He laughed dryly and put the spoon back in embarrassment. He even took a look at Yongkang. Although Yongkang's eyes were shining and he looked like he still wanted to eat, he tried his best to restrain himself. Instantly, Zhuangzi felt a little sad. Indeed, there was still a long way to go to become a shopkeeper. The loquat has the effect of moistening the lungs and stopping coughing. The loquat ointment in the pharmacy is quite expensive, and it is not delicious. Boss, there's white sugar in this kind of loquat, right? Yundong nodded. Indeed, so the price of this loquat cannot be cheap. Boss, don't worry. Even if it's not cheap, there will definitely be many people who will buy it. Yongkang was very confident. Not only could the loquat be eaten, but the sugar water was also delicious. The wealthy families in the county might even fight for it. Yundong handed the matter of the new products to Yongkang before bringing the canned food to Qingyuan's school. Madame Gu was very happy to see her. My husband is in class. He'll be resting in 15 minutes. Take a seat and wait for him. She poured some tea for Yundong and called Qin Anning over to meet her. Qin Anning liked Yundong a lot, especially since she had so much fun at Yongfu village the last time. She yearned to go there again. Yundong smiled. You want to go? Sure. As long as your parents have no objections, you're welcome anytime. Qin Anning turned to look at Mrs. Gu, who sighed and thought to herself that her daughter was definitely born of the wrong gender. She should be a boy. As she was thinking, she saw Qin Wanqing striding over. It's good that you're here. I was thinking of going to Yongfu village to meet you later. Chapter 421. Can't laugh at Yunshu's novel. CM Yundong asked, Are you looking for me? Yes, come with me to the study. Yundong stood up suspiciously and followed Qin Wanqing. When she reached the study, she saw him take out 2 letters. One of them had been opened, and the other was still intact. Qin Wanqing pointed at the open letter and said, This is General Zhao's reply. It came from the capital. He said that your father did help him catch the bandits back then, but unfortunately, he was transferred back to the capital later. He originally wanted to bring your father along, but your father wanted to stay in Qingyuan Prefecture to look for you, so the two of them parted ways. Even though she was mentally prepared, Yundong was still a little disappointed. Qin Wanqing said, before General Zhao left, he lent Dajiang 30 taels of silver, so his life shouldn't be a problem. However, ever since General Zhao left, he hasn't contacted your father again. Yundong exhaled slowly. Got it. Is there any news from the Shuana Prefecture? Qin Wanqing shook his head regretfully. No. Then, she pushed another letter over. This is from Dr. Song. He has already arrived in the capital and entered the Imperial Hospital again. Yundong quickly took the letter and opened it. Song Dajiang's letter was also very simple. He said that he had entered the Imperial Hospital and had also searched the Imperial Pharmacy. Unfortunately, there was no Bimusi. However, he had heard from another Imperial physician in the Imperial Hospital that there seemed to be one in the warehouse of the Wanqing Prefecture. If it was convenient, she could see if she could buy it. A smile appeared on Yundong's face as she became slightly excited. Qin Wanqing took a sip of tea. Seeing this, he couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. Why? Is there good news? Yundong nodded repeatedly. Yes, Dr. Song said that there is Bimusi in Wanqing Prefecture. So, you plan to go to Wanqing Prefecture personally? That's right. You're really good at traveling. How long have you been back? Qin Wanqing muttered. When are you preparing to set off? After Yunshu's birthday in a few days. Speaking of the birthday, Yundong suddenly remembered her business here. She put away the letter and asked Qingyuan if she could invite Yunshu's classmates to Yongfu village. Qingyuan did not care. We'll have to ask the other students. He got someone to bring Yunshu and Yunji over. The two of them were puzzled at first until they saw Yundong and heard that it was about his birthday celebration. Yunshu almost jumped up. He could even get all his classmates to go to his house. He could not wait to run back to the school and hurriedly invited everyone. After everyone agreed, he ran back to Yundong. The students in the school waited for him to leave. Among them, more than 10 of them had strange expressions. Jiang saw this and called all of them out. He walked to the side and said in a low voice, "Yunshu invited us out of goodwill. This time, we can't be as rude as when we visited the Cheng family last time." Everyone nodded. "We want. I really didn't do it on purpose last time. It was my first time going to a village. I didn't know that the house was so dilapidated, so I let it slip. This time, I won't make a fuss and hurt their self-esteem. Yes, we know what we're doing." These 10 or so people were all students from the county city, and 2 of them were from the prefectural city. After all, Qin Wenzheng's reputation was not well known. Most of the people who knew of his achievements were from the county city. However, these children had almost never been to the villages below. The one who had left the deepest impression on them was Gao Chengying's family. In the end, they did not pay attention and said something embarrassing. Chapter 422. Yunshu is very poor as Vel. Actually, Yunshu came to school in a carriage every day. There were also servants at home. Originally, no one would associate him with a dilapidated house. But Yunshu said that he was poor every day and was saving copper coins every day. He even promoted his school bag and told others that he was helping the Annie next door in the village expand business. He would collect 10 copper coins as the errand fee. He found every opportunity to say that his eldest sister was the only one in the family who had worked hard to support the family. He had not found his father yet. He wanted to earn money to find his father and treat his mother. He originally planned to owe the tuition fee. Unfortunately, the heartless headmaster of the academy actually did not agree. He almost did not want to come to school, but his eldest sister said that she would pay for him no matter what. In order not to let his sister down, he could only come to the school to work hard. Back then, Gao Chengying had also said that their family's conditions were not good, but the poverty that everyone imagined was completely different from what they had really seen. After such a huge shock, coupled with Yunshu's repeated emphasis, these young and inexperienced students naturally felt that Yunshu might be the poorest child in their school. It was too pitiful. Her elder sister was a heroine. Not only did she provide for Yunshu, but she also sent her cousin over. As for the carriage, they heard from Yunshu that the villagers had to pay for the travel expenses when they took the carriage. It should be a tool for their family to earn money. Also, the clothes of Yunshu's eldest sister, whom they had seen at Jinshu restaurant last time, should be her best clothes. Thus, when Yunshu and Yunji returned to class, they met everyone's sympathetic gazes. Yunshu was speechless. Why did everyone look at him differently after he was gone for a while? Could it be that they had some thoughts about him? Xiaoyu even walked up to him and patted his small shoulder heavily. He said, "Yunshu, actually, we don't have high requirements for food and accommodation. For your birthday, longevity noodles are enough." Yunshu thought about it and nodded in agreement. "Yes, I didn't even have eggs in the past. This is my first birthday celebration. I can finally eat longevity noodles." At the thought of this, he couldn't help but swallow his saliva. He didn't know what was the difference between longevity noodles and ordinary noodles. They should taste better. Everyone immediately felt that this child was too pitiful. Even Gao Chengying walked over and held his hand sympathetically. "We can eat less." Yunshu's eyes lit up. He held his hand. "You are the best." Yunji blinked in confusion. Why did this conversation seem a little strange? He was also feeling strange. Although he had never been to Yongfu village, his brother had been there. Moreover, his brother had stayed there for more than half a month. If the living conditions were really that bad, Would he be reluctant to come back? Would he brag about how great the Gu family was every day? However, on second thought, Big Brother had a strange personality. Perhaps he liked houses that were leaky? Hence, Louis did not think too much about it. On the other hand, Jiang, being the oldest among them, could not help but sigh when he saw that everyone's thoughts had gone astray. He only reminded everyone to be careful with their words and not make a fuss. He didn't say that Yunshu's family was so poor that they couldn't even afford noodles. What were these little ones thinking? Wake up, okay? If Gu Yunshu's family was really so poor, why would he have servants? Chapter 423. I'm afraid you don't want to live anymore, B0's Nvel. CM Gu Yundong did not know that Yunshu had done such a thing in school. She thought that since it was her brother's classmates' first visit here, she naturally had to treat them well. She could start preparing now. Hence, after she was done with Qingyuan, she prepared to leave. Before she left 2 cans behind. Those are new fruit cans that are about to be served in our shop. Try it and see if you can sell it. Qingyuan returned to his room with the cans in disdain and said to Madame Gu, "Why cans? You might as well send 2 caddies of white sugar." Madame Gu ignored him and studied the cans curiously. She opened a can and poured the pulp into a bowl. Qingyuan, who was about to leave, suddenly turned back. When he saw Madame Gu's bright eyes after taking a small bite of loquat, he was stunned. He silently picked up the spoon and took a sip. It was actually quite delicious. It was refreshing and sweet, and the sugar water was abundant. Qingyuan couldn't help but eat another one, then another and another. Therefore, when Madame Gu slowly swallowed it and wanted to continue eating, she saw that her husband had already drunk the last bit of sugar water. Madame Gu was speechless. He probably didn't want to live anymore. After eating and drinking his fill, Qingyuan looked up and realized what he had done. He coughed lightly and tried his best to maintain his image as a school teacher. He pointed at the other can and said, "Well, they'll leave it for you and Anning to eat. Anning is young, and this can is sweet. Tell her to eat less." With that, he left. He would go to Yundong's shop to ask around and see if he could buy a few more cans. These things were not bad. At this moment, Yundong had already carried the cans to the Liu family. Old Master Liu accepted the things. Liu Wei was not around, and the servants of the Liu family said that he had gone to his elder sister's house and had not returned. Yundong went straight back to Yongfu village. Big Qian and Tong Ping went to collect the fruits. Yundong felt that there were still too few people, so she asked Niu Don father to follow them. The work in the workshop began to slowly get on track. Yundong offered lunch to the workers for free. She found 3 efficient old women from the village to start the fire at the stove that had been built at the back of the workshop. There was meat and vegetables for lunch. It was better than what they had at home. This made many people's eyes light up with excitement. There were even people who did not eat at noon and planned to bring the food back to eat secretly at night. Yundong was also very helpless about this. There were a few families that were really poor. Their children were so hungry that their faces were sallow and their bodies were thin. They could not even eat a full meal a day. As adults, how could they eat a large bowl of food in peace? Sometimes, when they looked at the meat slices and thought about their family, they would cry. There was nothing wrong with bringing the food back. In the modern era, there were still many people who brought food back from the canteen. However, she also had a rule that everyone would only get food once. They could bring it back, but if the workers were to starve and delay their work, they would be fired. The workshop could not afford them. After all, the workshop only recruited you and had no intention of supporting your family. This rule dispelled many people's thoughts. At least no one would stay hungry at noon. At most, only some of the food would be brought home at night for the children to taste. With Tong and in charge of the workshop, Yundong was much more relaxed. The next day, Zhang came over with the idea of launching new products in the shop. Not only him, even old Master Liu came. Chapter 424. Planning to open a shop in the Prefectural city B0's Nvel. CM old Master Liu had already eaten the can yesterday. He knew that the things that this girl from the Gu family had brought were definitely not ordinary. He had come this time to discuss collaboration with Yundong. Coincidentally, Zhang Gang's plan also had this intention. Boss, I'm thinking that the price of this canned fruit is not cheap. Most of the people who come to our shop to buy candy are servants of those families. Even if these people know that there are new things in Gus, they might not tell their master. After all, white sugar could not compare to clothes and jewelry. They would only know if they went over to try it themselves. Buying 5 caddies of sugar every day. Which rich family's young master had nothing better to do and came here every day. Moreover, these servants could not come to the master usually. Even if they knew that Gus had something called fruit cans, they could not convey it to the master in time. Zhang Gang had thought of sending an invitation to the various families, but that would make it seem as if he was begging others to buy his things. This did not match what the boss said positioning. Thus, Zhang Gang thought of the Liu family's restaurant. Coincidentally, the Liu family and his boss had a good relationship. Perhaps it was a mutually beneficial matter. He did not expect to meet old Master Liu on the way to Yongfu village. The other party's thoughts coincided with his. Yundong nodded. All right, we'll do as you say. As she spoke, she suddenly turned to look at old Master Liu. Uncle Liu, I heard that you've also opened Jinshu restaurant in Shuana Prefecture. Old Master Liu was stunned for a moment before he laughed out loud. Why? Do you have enough goods here? Do you want to sell them in the restaurant over there? I want to try selling them in the Prefectural city, so that I'll be confident when I open a shop there in the future. Old Master Liu pondered for a moment. That's true. I heard from Liu Wei that you've grown a lot of fruits. The workshop will also grow bigger in the future. This county city won't be able to eat it. There are many big families in the Prefectural city, so it can be sold for a high price. All right, it just so happens that the restaurants in the Prefectural city lack new products. Your cans come at the right time. However, you have to lower the price for me. Of course. Yundong's price was 120 copper coins for a fruit can. Of course, that was the price in the county. There were at least 6 or 7 loquats and a lot of white sugar in a can. These two things were not cheap. Coupled with the labor transportation fee and the cost of the clay pot, the profit wasn't much compared to white sugar. The price in the Prefectural city would definitely be raised. Regardless of whether the customers ate it or gave it as a gift, they would gain face. Yundong and old Master Liu discussed the supply problem and quietly waited for the feedback from Jinshu restaurant. Just one day later, Zhang Gang came again. The customers who went to the restaurant to eat were all unsatisfied. Then, they followed old Master Liu's guidance and ran to Gus. Each of them had a few jars without hesitation. In less than half a day, the canned loquats that had been brought to the shop the day before were all snatched away. Even Qin Wanqing secretly came over to buy 3 big jars and said that his wife and daughter liked them. However, Zhang Gang had sharp eyes. How could he not know that it was Mr. Qin who liked this? Yundong was also happy. In the following days, she asked Mao and the others to bring the cans from the workshop to the shop and restaurant after they finished practicing every morning. The supply problem in the shop was solved. Soon, it was Yunshu's birthday. Chapter 425, Classmates B. Zeros and Vel. CM the Gu family had been busy since early in the morning. They had cleaned everything inside and out. Even Zheng Jia, Zheng Yu, and Zheng Lu from the Zheng family next door ran over to help. Although Yunshu went to school in the county city, he still played with his good friends every day after school. Especially since the 3 Zheng siblings did not have the chance to read and write. Yunshu would teach them every day when he came back. Now that they had learned a lot of words, Madame Dong was overjoyed. She wanted to work harder and earn more money. Perhaps she could send her children to school. She did not think of asking them to take the elementary scholar examination to become a high official. She just felt that it was always good for children to be able to read. Didn't everybody see that even the servants of the Gu family were learning? Tong was the best and fastest at learning, so he became the manager of the workshop. It could be seen that being literate would definitely be more promising than being illiterate in the future. As Gu Yunshu's friends, they naturally had to come and help him on his birthday. Yundong was also very happy. Early in the morning, she followed Father Tong to send the 2 children to school. Then, she personally went to the market to buy groceries. Yunshu only had 16 classmates in total. Yundong had thought about finding more carriages to transport them. However, she was rejected. Which of the classmates did not have a carriage? Lu Yi asked his coachman to stop the carriage at the school gate and wait for everyone to finish school. 2 carriages were indeed enough. All of them were little kids and were not big. Yundong swept through the county before returning with half a carriage full of things and satisfaction. She had asked Yunshu what he wanted to eat for his birthday. The little guy happily said that he wanted to eat longevity noodles and boiled eggs. Yundong's heart ached when she heard that. These were very ordinary things, but Yunshu had never eaten them during his birthday before, so he was concerned. Yundong did not ask him anything else. She had already drawn up a recipe in her heart. She knew how to make cakes, but there were too many people. She might have to make 2 big cakes. For this reason, she had asked around 2 days in advance to find out where cows could produce milk. When she got home, she pulled Shao Qingyuan over as a coolie and handed him a big bowl of egg whites and white sugar. She smiled and said, "It's time to test your hand speed. Stir it until it turns into white cream." Shao Qingyuan was a little stunned. Cream? What was that? But whatever Yundong asked him to do, he would do it. It was only when the egg white slowly turned into a white cotton-like shape that Shao Qingyuan was shocked. It turned out that after stirring the egg whites for 15 minutes, it would become like this. His eyes gradually lit up as he looked at Yundong. He felt that she would surprise him from time to time. The Gu family was busy. When the school knew that Yunshu was going to invite everyone to his house for his birthday celebration, Qingyuan simply let them leave school 2 hours early. Seeing the students get into the carriage one by one, Qingyuan actually had the urge to follow them. However, he thought that he was their teacher and would make these students uncomfortable if he went, so he dismissed the idea. After all, he still had to protect his image. When he faced Yundong, he was easily irritable. The 2 carriages entered Yongfu village one after another. Everyone had agreed in advance that they could not make a fuss, and they had to remain calm and low-key after entering the village. However, it was their first time here after all. They still lifted the curtain of the carriage and looked outside. Yongfu village had changed a lot in the past 6 months, but most of the houses still looked very dilapidated. Chapter 426, Stunned Schoolmates beat Zeros and Vel. Seeing this, everyone pitted Yunshu even more. However, before they reached the Gu residence, Xiaoyu couldn't help but ask, "Yunshu, where exactly is your home?" "It's at the foot of the mountain. Let's go further in. We'll be there soon." Yunshu could not help but sway when he thought about how he would be able to eat longevity noodles soon. Big Sister said that she had personally made longevity noodles for him to eat. It would definitely be a delicacy. At the foot of the mountain, even people like Gao Qingying, who also lived in the countryside, could not help but pity him. The foot of the mountain was the worst position in the village. The houses of the poorest families in their village were all at the foot of the mountain. Yunshu did not see their expressions at all. He was still imagining his longevity noodles. Finally, the carriage slowly came to a stop. The people in the carriage looked at each other. When they saw Yunshu get out of the carriage, they stepped off the stools one by one. Then, they widened their eyes and looked at the green brick house in front of them in shock. This. How could such a house appear in the village? And it was at the foot of the mountain? Could this be Yunshu's house? No. Everyone shook their heads decisively. They looked left and right and saw an identical green brick-tiled house, as well as the farmyard beside it. Phew! It seemed that this was Yunshu's house. It looked fine and not very shabby. They were about to walk towards the Zheng family's courtyard. Unexpectedly, a small figure suddenly ran out of the green brick house and rushed towards them. Second brother, cousin. The young lady hugged Yunshu and raised her flour-covered hand to wipe Yunshu's face. Before he could react, he immediately ran back. Yunshu was speechless. His younger sister was becoming more and more mischievous. He wiped his face helplessly with a handkerchief before turning around. When he saw everyone's stunned expressions, he was instantly confused. What's wrong? Wasn't it just flour that his sister rubbed on him? Why did it seem like they had seen something strange? Or was it that they were all mesmerized by their little sister's cute appearance? That won't do. My little sister is still young. How can these people be so dirty? Yunshu pulled a long face. Just as he was about to educate them seriously, he heard Jiang laugh and say, "Let's go. It's inappropriate to stand at the door. There are people watching us." He was the first to react. He knew it. Yunshu's family background was definitely not bad. Yunshu remembered that she was the host and quickly brought everyone in. One by one, the children followed behind her in a daze. It was not until they stepped into the house that they suddenly came back to their senses. "Yunshu, is this your house?" "Yes." Yunshu nodded. But didn't you say that your family is poor?" "Yes, I'm very poor. My family is very poor. I've only been to a few restaurants." "Didn't you say you've never eaten longevity noodles before?" "Yes, in the past, my grandmother didn't let me eat it. However, we escaped and came here. Now, the one in charge is my elder sister. My elder sister said that she would cook noodles for me. You guys should eat less later. Go eat meat. Don't eat my noodles." Everyone was speechless. Why did they feel like they had been tricked? They were furious and wanted to criticize him, but they realized that everything seemed to be their imagination. No, Yunshu's perception of poverty was untraditional. Chapter 427. Yunshu's Toy B0s and Vel. The little kids felt that they should properly teach him what it meant to be truly poor. They had only seen poor people pretending to be rich, but they had never seen anyone living in a green brick house and using servants say that they had to work hard to earn 10 copper coins. However, as soon as they walked into the courtyard, they could not help but be stunned by the scenery inside. There were many lanterns hanging under the corridor. There were swings in the front yard, trellises, date trees, and pomegranate trees. There were beautiful birds folded with colored paper in the corridor, frogs, butterflies, and all kinds of small animals. Wow, so beautiful. Are these flowers? They're folded with paper. They look like flowers. Smells good. I know where the kitchen is. Yunshu was also a little dumbfounded. When he went out in the morning, they were not there. Now, he realized that the entire house had been decorated. His birthday wish was to eat a bowl of longevity noodles and a boiled egg, but Big Sister had gone through so much trouble to give him such a big surprise. Yunshu wanted to cry, and then he really did. He kept wiping his eyes with his small hands. Yunji, who was watching from the side, was envious. He still remembered that his birthday was a few months ago. At that time, he didn't even have a full meal and could only drink 2 mouthfuls of cold water. Now that he saw Yunshu crying, he hurried forward to comfort him. "You should be happy about your birthday. Everyone is looking at you. Don't cry anymore." Yundong also walked out of the kitchen and looked at the little guy standing under the porch. Big Sister prepared everything meticulously. "Don't you like it?" I like it. He wiped his tears and quickly ran over to hug her waist. "Big Sister, I like it so much. I'm so happy. I've never been so happy. Actually, I just want to eat a bowl of longevity noodles." Yundong stroked his head. "There's longevity noodles, boiled eggs, and birthday cake." "What's a birthday cake?" The child looked up in confusion and blinked. Yundong did not answer. Instead, she pushed him. "All right, you'll entertain your classmates first. You'll know when dinner starts later." Oh, Yunshu finally realized that he seemed to have neglected the guests. He immediately smiled in embarrassment and turned to bring his classmates to his room. Yunshu's room was very large. It was divided into an inner and outer room. There was a desk, a bed, and a bookcase. There were some books on the cabinet that they usually read, but there were also books that involved other aspects. Lu even found a novel inside, and was so shocked that he almost threw it out. Madame Chui knocked on the door and came in with sugar water. Tong Shuetao followed behind with a pile of things in her hands. As soon as she entered, she said to Yunshu, "It's still early. Everyone can relax here. This is a jigsaw puzzle. Second young master knows how to play it. This is the Lubon lock. You can try to undo it and put it back together. This is the chessboard. Everyone can play chess. She placed the things on the bed first, and then spread 2 carpets on the ground so that everyone could sit on them. Jiang and the others were stunned as they watched Madame Cui and Tong Shueitao come and go. Their gazes slowly shifted to the pile of things. In the next moment, everyone rushed forward and targeted Lu Banlok. Only Lu Yi tilted his head and curiously looked at the puzzle in his hand. What is this? How do I play it? It was something he had never seen before. It looked even more novel than the Lu Banlok. Chapter 428. So much food B, zeros, and Vel. CM Gu Yunshu walked over and took out one of the puzzle pieces. He placed it on the bed and took out a piece of paper. He said to Lu Yi, "Look, this is a picture. The person on this picture is me." This picture was drawn by Gu Yundong. It was a small picture of Gu Yunshu with a big head and a small body. He looked exceptionally cute. Gu Yunshu was very proud. He straightened his back and introduced, "You have to put all the pieces of wood together to make me. Isn't that interesting? There are rules and techniques to this. Let me tell you, I'm very familiar with this. If you don't understand, I can teach you." He pointed at the other pictures. There are also pictures of Yuanji, our family, and this house. Let me tell you, the jigsaw puzzle of this house is very difficult. Do you think the colors are all the same? You don't even know where to put the bricks. This is too difficult for you. For the first time, we can start from the simple ones. For example, my picture. First, finish me, then challenge the difficult ones. Lu Yi glanced at him and thought for a moment. Then, he slowly picked up the jigsaw puzzle of the house. "Gu Yunshu, you'll lose me like this. I'm telling you that you'll regret it. Don't cry and beg me later." However, when the others heard his explanation, they stopped what they were doing and surrounded him. Xiaoyu was very loyal. "Yunshu, let me compliment your picture. Wow, this picture is so beautiful. Who drew it? Can they draw one for me too?" This was drawn by Big Sister. Big Sister was very busy. How could she help everyone draw? Therefore, Gu Yunshu decisively refused. "You could draw this yourself. Didn't the teacher just teach you this drawing method? It'll be fine when you're familiar with it. When you're done, I can find someone to help you make a jigsaw puzzle." Xiaoyu was a little disappointed. He felt that even if he was proficient, he wouldn't be able to draw like this. Yunshu was very proud. Who asked him to have a good sister? Just as she was thinking about it, there was another knock on the door. This time, it was Tong Shueitao who came in. The moment the door opened, a fragrance wafted in crazily. The little kid's gazes focused on the tray in Tong Shueitao's hand almost at the same time. She walked over with a smile. In fact, she was also swallowing her saliva. She could only desperately hold her breath to prevent the fragrance from entering her nostrils. Our miss said that there's still some time before dinner. She's afraid that everyone will be hungry, so she wants you to eat something first. She placed a tray on the table. This is fried chicken drumsticks, chicken wings, fries, and chips. You can eat them with this sauce. There are also melon seeds, peanuts, and lollipops here. If you want to eat sweet food, there can loquats, canned peaches, and dried fruit. By the way, each of you can have a portion of this double skim milk. Everyone try it first. The children were speechless. Their eyes were about to pop out. They had naturally eaten good food, but they had never seen or heard of so many good things. Especially the two from the Prefectural city. They thought that there would be nothing surprising with their knowledge and experience. However, they had never heard of the puzzle before. What was this fried chicken drumstick, chicken wings, and chips? What was the can and lollipop? What was this double skim milk? They all looked so delicious. Chapter 429. Happy Birthday, B. Zeros and Vel. See, there was actually not much food. The children ate a little to stop their hunger. Gu Yundong knew that most of the children in the future liked to eat KFC. It was fine to eat it once in a while if it was hygienic. Tong Shueitao put down the things and left. The children gathered around the table and began to sniffle. "Smells good. I'm sure it's good. Yunshu, can we eat?" Gu Yunshu was also stunned. He had eaten cans and lollipops. Eldest sister had also fried chicken drumsticks for him to eat. But what was this double-skinned milk? However, he was the host. He immediately nodded and said seriously, "Of course you can eat. Everyone, don't stand on ceremony. Just make yourselves at home." The kids thanked him one after another. Then, the eldest, Jiang, handed the food over one by one. They took a mouthful of double-skim milk. Oh, it was smooth and fragrant. How could there be such a delicious thing? Everyone's eyes lit up. By the time they came back to their senses, they had almost finished it and were instantly embarrassed. Yunshu called everyone over play and even went out to bring Zheng Jia and Zheng Luo in. The two of them were still a little timid in front of the students from the school. They stood in the corner and did not dare to speak. Fortunately, Jiang saw the desire for knowledge in their eyes. He became a little teacher and excitedly taught them how to read. Later on, Yundong also came over. He was still studying in town, and his school hours were late. Yunshu had always had a good relationship with him. They often practiced calligraphy and studied together after returning home. Especially after Chen Liang's eldest son returned, there was an additional family in the house. Occasionally, there would be a commotion. Yongkang was impatient and would go to Yunshu's house to study together most of the time. The Gu family's house was huge, and Yunshu's study was even more spacious. The lighting was also good. In addition, he had a good friend with him, so it was easier for him to learn here. At this moment, Yunshu's room was very lively. Everyone was playing games that they had never played before. They ate snacks that they had never eaten before and felt as if they had sublimated. They had originally wanted to educate Yunshu about poverty. Now that they had eaten his food, it was not appropriate for them to speak. However, Yunshu was really blessed to have so much delicious food. After more than an hour, Yundong finally let everyone out for dinner. In fact, they were already half full after eating the snacks. However, when they smelled the fragrance coming from the flower hall, they could not help but swallow their saliva. The sky had already darkened slightly, and the lanterns under the corridor had been lit. They were indescribably beautiful. Yunshu walked in front, followed by more than 10 classmates. He actually had the aura of a boss, if he had grown a little taller. As soon as they entered the reception hall, they saw Yundong holding a strange, beautiful, and sweet thing in his hand. There were 6 thin candles on it as she slowly walked to his side. "Yunshu, happy birthday." "Happy birthday, Ashu." "Second brother, happy birthday." 3 voices rang out one after another. Through the hazy candlelight, Yunshu looked at his eldest sister, mother, and younger sister standing in front of him. His heart suddenly swelled. Some kind of emotion surged fiercely, making his eyes sore and swollen. In his mind, he could not help but think of last year's birthday. Because his father had stuffed a sweet into his mouth and second aunt had seen it, he had been scolded by his grandmother for the entire day. Chapter 430. 3 Wishes, B, Zeros, and Vel. See him at that time. He thought that he would never celebrate his birthday again. He was not happy at all. It was not good at all. But looking at the smiling faces of the 3 closest people in front of him, Yunshu suddenly choked. Yundong quickly handed the cake in her hand to Shao Qingyuan and squatted down to rub his head. "Everyone is looking at you. You can't cry." "Big sister, I am. He thought that he only needed to eat a bowl of longevity noodles. He did not expect Big Sister to put in so much effort. He was really happy. "Big sister, you're so good. I'm so happy to be your younger brother." Yundong was also very happy. She still remembered how he looked when she first came. He was skinny and had a big head. He was obviously very tired, but he still wanted to take on the responsibility of the entire family. He wanted to cry, but he smiled at her desperately, as if it was not difficult at all as long as his family was by his side. At first, Yundong thought that as long as Madame Yang and the other 2 did not drag her down, she would do her best to protect them and let them grow up safely. When did it start? She had been paying attention to the 3 of them and always wanted to give them the best. The warmth that surged from the depths of her heart seemed to have changed her a lot. She had really felt the feelings between her family, and she would subconsciously repay them. "I'm also very happy that you're my younger brother." She led Yunshu to a stool at the side and sat down. She took the cake from Shao Qingyuan again and placed it on the table in front of him. Then, she met his puzzled gaze and smiled. This is the birthday cake I told you about. Come, close your eyes and make 3 wishes. Then blow out the candles. Your wishes will come true. Yunshu's eyes lit up. His eyes, which had just been washed with tears, were especially lively. Really, just make the wishes. He immediately closed his eyes obediently. My first wish is you don't have to say it out. Fine. He made a new wish. He was very pious in his heart. His first wish was to find his father as soon as possible and have a family reunion. His second wish was for his mother's illness to be cured quickly. His third wish was for his family to be safe and happy forever. After that, he opened his eyes. Yunshu did not know that his first wish would soon come true. Yundong saw that he had opened his eyes and was about to ask him to blow out the candles when she saw that the little girl beside him was also making a wish with her eyes closed. She immediately smiled and simply waited for her until she opened her eyes in satisfaction. Only then did she ask Yunshu to blow out the candles. The cake was sweet and rare. Yundong saw that there were a lot of people, so she made 2 big pieces. At this moment, each of them cut a small piece and ate it, not to mention the others. Even Shao Qingyuan couldn't help but narrow his eyes. This cake, he had made it before, but it was not easy to make cream. The group was in a good mood. Yunshu ate the longevity noodles that he had been longing for. No one fought with him. After all, they were already full from eating everything else. At night, they even agreed to walk around the village to digest their food and send Yongkang home. They walked around the village before returning to the Gu residence. Yundong arranged rooms for everyone. As everyone was small, it was not a problem for a few people to share a room. Under the warm blanket that emitted the smell of sunlight, everyone still felt like they were dreaming. Yunshu's birthday was too special. The next day, Yundong prepared cans for each of Yunshu's classmates as a return gift. This time, they each gave Yunshu a gift. It was not considered expensive, but it represented their goodwill. Then, she sent them to the carriages and got someone to ride them back to school. When the carriage left, and she returned to the Gu family, she saw Shao Qingyuan standing at the entrance of the Shao family's house and talking to the Jiang family's escort. He seemed to have a difficult expression. Chapter 431. Yundong leaves B0 CM Shao Qingyuan also saw her. After nodding slightly, he continued to talk to the escort. Not long after, the escort passed through the door. Shao Qingyuan walked towards her. He had something to say, but he didn't know how to start. He wanted to say something, but hesitated. Yundong could not help but laugh. What's wrong? If there's anything difficult, just say it. Shao Qingyuan rubbed his temples and said after a while, the Jiang family's escort agency is sending a batch of goods to Qingyuan Prefecture. They also have to transport something back. It's a long journey and they don't have enough manpower. They want me to help. If it was in the past, Shao Qingyuan had nothing to worry about and would just go, but now he was about to have a family. It would take at least a month or 2 to deliver goods to Qingyuan Prefecture. He had just confirmed his relationship with her and did not want to be separated. However, the Jiang family's bodyguard agency had interacted with him a lot in the past 6 months, and their relationship was not bad. The manager of Gus, Yongkang, was from the Jiang family's bodyguard agency. In addition, when he asked a martial master to come to his house to teach Mao and the others martial arts, the other party did not even decline and agreed readily. Therefore, now that the Jiang family's bodyguard agency needed help, he could not just reject them. Yundong did not expect this. Her expression became strange. She pulled her hair that was hanging by her side and looked hesitant. Actually, I also have something to tell you. What is it? Shao Qingyuan was stunned. Yundong lowered her head slightly and said in a low voice, a few days ago, I received a letter from Dr. Song. He said that there may be by Musi in Wanqing Prefecture. I want to make a trip to Wanqing Prefecture after Yunshu's birthday. Actually, as soon as she received the news, she wanted to tell Shao Qingyuan, but she didn't know how to. Shao Qingyuan was stunned. She was going to Wanqing Prefecture? Then he'll reject the Jiang family's escort agency and accompany you there, he said without hesitation. Yundong quickly stopped her. Don't. The Jiang family's bodyguard agency has helped you a lot. It's rare that they need your help. They definitely can't find anyone else. She thought for a moment and asked, when will they set off? In 2 days. Then I'll set off in 2 days too. I happen to pass by Qingyuan Prefecture on my way to Wanqing Prefecture. We could travel together for a while. Shao Qingyuan frowned. Are you going to finish the rest of the journey alone? Yundong nodded. You don't trust me? Of course I do. Shao Qingyuan was a little vexed. Why did things happen so coincidentally? Not only did he have to deliver the goods to Qingyuan Prefecture, but there was also a batch of goods that had to be transported back in time. Otherwise, he could accompany her there. He knew that she had the ability to settle these things alone, but Shao Qingyuan wanted to share the burden with her. He was her future husband. He hoped that he would be the one to experience everything with her in the future. In the end, they could only do as Yundong said after some discussion. There were still 2 days left. Yundong's arrangements were enough. Moreover, with the previous experience, no one would panic anymore. Only at the workshop, there were more people, and the person in charge had also changed to Tongan. This was not a big deal. After a few days of observation, Tong was getting more and more proficient. In the end, Yundong brought a lot of canned food and dried fruits. Most of them were placed in her space, while the rest were placed in the carriage. This time, under Tong Shuetao's strong request, she brought her along. Shao Qingyuan also brought Mao and Zhu along to let them see the world. The other two stayed at home. That morning, Yundong got into the carriage while Madame Yang and the others reluctantly bade her farewell. She left Yongfu village. As soon as she left, someone came looking for her. Chapter 432. Children are debts B. Zeros and Vel. Madame Zhou had made up her mind to look for Yundong. She did not even tell Cheng Liang. But when she reached the Gu residence, she saw that Aunt Ku and the others had just turned around. Yundong had already left. Aunt Ku invited her in. She shook her head, forcing a smile on her face. Aunt Ku had also heard a little about what had happened in her family recently. Seeing this, she could not help but raise her eyebrows and ask, "You're looking for Yundong for your first son, right?" Madame Zhou laughed dryly. No. Whether it's true or not, I'm afraid you have to wait for Yundong to come back first. Madame Zhou knew that Tong was in charge of the workshop now. Tong was a servant of the Gu family and had the right to manage it. However, he could not recruit people without Yundong's instructions. She could ask Yundong for help because of Yundong's friendship with the Chun family, but she did not have much of a relationship with Tong, and Madame Zhou did not know what to feel. She felt vexed and relieved. She had no choice but to come over because she was annoyed by her eldest son at home. Seeing that his second son was becoming more and more promising in the Gu family, collecting fruits everywhere outside, and even buying some snacks for the children to eat when he came back, Cheng Liang valued him more and more. The eldest son's life was too smooth sailing in the past. After the work in town was gone, he came back and was laughed at by many people. Especially when he was working in the fields, his energy was not even comparable to hers. He could even knock his feet with a hoe. He was not someone born to do this at all. In addition, his wife was not someone who could endure hardship. Every day, she would complain that she was tired even when cooking. When feeding pigs and chickens, she despised the dirt. For this, the second daughter-in-law's face darkened. As for their son, he was also studying in town now. He was 2 years older than Yodan and lived in his grandfather's house. He was quite obedient. The atmosphere in the house was getting tenser and tenser. The two brothers even quarreled yesterday. This had never happened before, which made Madame Zhou anxious. She wondered if she could ask Yundong for help. After Madame Zhou left, Aunt Ku shook her head. Fortunately, she did not have any children. Otherwise, she would still have to worry about them when she was old. Looking at Madame Zhou, she used to be so energetic. Her eldest son had only been back for a few months, but she looked like she had aged a few years. Aunt Ku shook her head and turned to enter. Yundong had already followed Shao Qingyuan to the Jiang family's bodyguard agency. This was her first time here. The Jiang family's bodyguard agency was indeed not big, and there were not many escorts, but all of them were energetic and seemed to be loyal. Shao Qingyuan had said 2 days ago that Gu Yundong would travel with them. Hence, no one was surprised to see Gu Yundong. Moreover, because Yongkang was the shopkeeper of Gus, Yongkang's wife warmly served her tea and brought out the snacks she had made for her to eat. Gu Yundong had met her before. Previously, during the New Year, Yongkang had brought her to Yongfu village to celebrate the New Year. She was a straightforward and generous aunt. The people from the escort agency were all preparing outside. The team would set off after 7 o'clock. Gu Yundong chatted with Yongkang's wife in the hall for a while before walking leisurely to the courtyard. She watched as everyone carried the things to the carriage. She moved closer to Shao Qingyuan and asked, "What are you bringing to Qingyuan Prefecture this time?" Shao Qingyuan's expression was complicated as he looked at the carriage in front of him in silence. After a long time, he said, "Wine." "Wine?" Gu Yundong was about to ask something when she heard a familiar voice outside. Chapter 433. Meeting the Tao family, B0s and Vel. CM Gu Yundong had just turned his head when the other party saw her. He immediately smiled. "Boss Gu, you're here too. Young Master Tao." Gu Yundong nodded slightly. She looked down on Tao Xing, especially after he lost to Lu Wei. However, Tao Feng knew the ways of the world. When Gus opened for business, he even came to support them and gave them gifts. Later, he also asked the servants at home to buy a lot of white sugar. "I haven't seen Boss Gu for a long time. Gus seems to have a few new kin fruits recently. They taste very good. It's just that they're too in demand. I want to buy some for others, but I can't buy them." Tao Feng shook his head regretfully. Gu Yundong was about to answer when Shao Qingyuan suddenly said, "Let's go over there to help." Gu Yundong felt that something was wrong with his expression just now. No, it should be said that it had happened before when they met the Tao family. Did he have any grudges with the Tao family? Gu Yundong nodded at Tao Feng and left with Shao Qingyuan. Shao Qingyuan had indeed gone to help load the goods. Gu Yundong stood behind him and watched as he busied himself. After he carried one of the jars of wine into the carriage, she asked, "Is this wine from the Tao family? Is it their wine that needs to be sent to Qingyuan Prefecture?" "Yes, they're said to be newly brewed. There are only 4 jars. There are also some other things. They were transported by the way. The most important merchandise was only 4 jars of wine from the Tao family." Gu Yundong tilted her head and asked him with a smile, "You know the Tao family?" "I don't know them." Shao Qingyuan turned around. When he saw her tilt her head, he actually felt that she was a little cute. The gloom in his heart just now was suddenly swept away. He couldn't help but look around. When he saw that no one was looking in his direction, he took her hand. He gently rubbed it twice before saying, "About the Tao family. I haven't thought of how to say it yet. He'll tell you in the future." Gu Yundong glared at him. This person was always finding opportunities to interact with her. He was getting more and more shameless. Shao Qingyuan couldn't help but laugh. Someone from the courtyard called out to them, "Qingyuan, Miss Gu, let's go." Gu Yundong retracted her hand. Shao Qingyuan was a little annoyed. Why did someone ruin his plans every time? The convoy had already been prepared. There were only 3 carriages. Including Gu Yundong's carriage, there were 4 carriages. It was not a big team. There were only 6 escorts, including Shao Qingyuan. Amount and Aju were there to gain experience. When the convoy set off, Tao Feng was still standing at the entrance of the courtyard. When he saw Escort Wang, who was in charge of the team this time, he said, "Thank you for your trouble. I wish you a safe journey." "Don't worry, young Master Tao. We will definitely deliver the items safely." Escort Wang was ambitious and his gaze was firm. With a wave of his hand, he walked out of the escort agency in a grand manner. The escorts behind also followed with their heads held high. Gu Yundong was speechless. It was as if they were going out to fight. Only Shao Qingyuan continued to walk past Tao Feng without looking aside. He was in Gu Yundong's carriage. Sometimes he would drive the carriage, and sometimes Tong Shuitao would drive the carriage. He would directly enter the carriage and touch her small hand. The other people in the convoy were all men, and they could be considered half martial artists. When they went out, They did not pay much attention to the distinction between men and women, especially since the two of them were engaged. It was normal for a man to take care of his fiancée. The carriage passed by the Shuana Prefecture and stayed overnight. Gu Yundong went to look at the wall with Eldest Aunt Gu and the others' portraits. Chapter 434. Not Good B. Zeros and Vel. CM seeing that there were several notices blocking the portraits. Gu Yundong frowned slightly and reached out to tear them off and paste them to the side. Later on, she even went to Aunt K's house and asked the neighbors nearby. Unfortunately, the neighbors said that no one had come to look for Aunt Ku, so Gu Yundong could only leave regretfully. Unexpectedly, as soon as she left, a woman returned home. This person happened to be the person who saw Mrs. Run of the Zhou mansion that day. The next day, when the convoy left the Shuanha Prefecture, the accommodation conditions for the rest of the journey were much worse. Sometimes they had to stay outside. The convoy traveled fast. In fact, they had already tried their best to take care of the two girls, Gu Yundong and Tong Shuitao. However, they had to send the goods to their destination as soon as possible before they could be at ease. Shao Qingyuan could not bear it. He had wanted to ask her not to follow the convoy several times, but Gu Yundong had rejected him. In any case, she was already used to it. In the past, not only did she stay outside when she fled, but she could not even sleep. Now that Shao Qingyuan was by her side, she could sleep especially soundly in the carriage at night. There was nothing bitter about it. Tong Shuitao was even more unwilling. She could learn martial arts from these escorts. How could she give up such a rare opportunity? However, with Gu Yundong around, the escorts had a sumptuous meal. In the past, when they went out, they were all rough men. Not only was the food they ate hard, but it also tasted especially bad. Even if someone cooked, it was still torture. It was either too salty or too tasteless. It was better to eat dry food. With Gu Yundong and Tong Shuitao around, their culinary skills were very good. Since they had to eat anyway, it was fine to make more. They had brought rice, noodles, vegetable oil. The escort sect would also take the initiative to give them some money for the food. In any case, the Tao family had given them a lot of money for this trip. Escort Wang especially liked Gu Yundong's cooking. When the carriage was parked in the wilderness, he would often run to her side and squat down to take a look. It's a pity that we will reach Qingyuan Prefecture in 2 days. We can't enjoy Miss Gus cooking anymore. You've been watching for so long, but you still haven't learned it. Gu Yundong stirred the vegetable porridge twice and asked Tong Shuitao to go to the carriage to take out the pickled vegetables she had made. Escort Wang shook his head. This really requires talent. My hand is no different from my foot. It's really no good. As he spoke, he slapped his palm hard. Gu Yundong was speechless. It was Shao Qingyuan who pushed him to the side. Go and look after the goods. Don't be lazy. Hey kid, I'm at least 12 years older than you. Can you show me some respect? Escort Wang snorted unhappily. The other escorts at the side roared with laughter. Brother Wang, you said it yourself. We'll be arriving at Qingyuan Prefecture in 2 days. Qingyuan is going to be separated from Miss Gu, yet you still disturb the couple. You're too thick-skinned. Isn't that so? Your wife isn't around, so you specially went to sabotage other couples. How can you be so shameless? Someone shouted at Gu Yundong. Miss Gu, don't let him eat your porridge. Gu Yundong had interacted with the escorts in the escort agency for a long time and was very familiar with them. She quite liked these people. All of them treated her like a younger sister or a junior. Other than having to make her cook, they did not need her to worry about anything else. She smiled and was about to serve the porridge. Suddenly, Mao, who had gone to the forest to relieve himself, ran over quickly. Young master, miss, bad news. I saw a few people with masks on coming this way. Chapter 435. Gu Yundong, who is highly aspired, be zeros and vel. See him upon hearing this. The escorts, who had been smiling just now, suddenly stood up. Their expressions instantly became serious, and they looked ready to fight. Escort Wang directly said to Shao Qingyuan, hurry up and bring Miss Gu and the others to the forest to hide. Fa Wang, look after the goods. It was too late to leave with the goods now. Instead of panicking, it was better to prepare for war. Then, he turned around and asked Mao, "Did you see how many people there were?" "About a dozen." Mao's face was still a little pale. He knew that trouble was coming. Although he had learned a little martial arts, he was still not a match for his enemies in a real life-and-death battle. Escort Wang frowned. "Why would someone rob us? This road has been very safe since the disaster. Besides, the things they were protecting this time were not expensive." However, there was no time for him to think too much now. He glanced at the escorts. "Protect yourselves." Fa and Wang responded and walked to the carriage of goods. Shao Qingyuan also led Gu Yundong and Tong Shuitao into the forest at the side. Gu Yundong was skilled. She wanted to stay, but on second thought, she left with Tong Shuitao and Shao Qingyuan. After Shao Qingyuan brought them over and hid them, he asked Mao and Zhu to stay behind and protect them. Then he quickly walked out. As expected, he saw that Escort Wang had already fought with a dozen or so masked men. Although Escort Wang and the others were experienced and skilled in dealing with enemies, it was difficult for two fists to fight four hands. They were starting to be at a disadvantage. Fa and Wang, who were beside the truck, were surrounded by 5 or 6 people. Fa's arm had already been cut. Shao Qingyan narrowed his eyes and immediately ran to the side of the carriage to kick away the person who was about to slash Wang. As soon as he joined, the situation eased a little. Escort Wang slowly heaved a sigh of relief, and Fa and Wang finally smiled. Gu Yundong and the others hid behind a large rock. Although Mao and the others were nervous, they were unwilling to just hide behind and watch helplessly. After a while, he finally couldn't help but say, "Miss, let Shuitao protect you. Zhu and I will help." "You'll be courting death if you go," Gu Yundong said coldly. "Can't you see that they kill others without batting an eyelid? Escort Wang is already injured. You haven't even touched your sabers. How can you fight them to the death?" Mao scratched his head and thought for a while. "We can smash them with rocks." Zhu also nodded. "There are many thick sticks here. If we sneak attack from behind, we can at least knock out a few." Tong Shuitao scolded them. "Come on, you're not going to help. You're going to add trouble. You might even need the future master to protect you." Just as she finished speaking, she exclaimed softly, "Miss, they're too despicable." The 3 of them surrounded the future master and attacked him together. Puff, they almost hit him. Mao became even more anxious. "Miss, quickly think of a way." "That's right. We can't just watch helplessly." Zhu suddenly hated himself for learning martial arts too slowly recently. "Miss, you've always been smart. There must be a way." As the 3 of them spoke, they turned around and placed all their hopes on Gu Yundong. However, the next moment, the 3 of them were stunned. Wait, when did the crossbow and mishand appear? Why didn't they see it? Chapter 436. Put into the space B0s and Vel. CM Gu Yundong had already aimed the crossbow at the person who was planning to sneak an attack on Shao Qingyuan's back. With a swoosh, the crossbow bolt seemed to have eyes and suddenly pierced into that person's back. Mao and Zhu had seen her shoot people with a crossbow last time, but this was the first time Tong Shuitao had seen it. Her eyes lit up with excitement. "Miss is amazing." Gu Yundong frowned. The angle was not good. She could not kill the target in one strike. Escort Wang and the robbers, who were fighting crazily, were stunned when they saw someone fall to the ground after being shot. They still have people in the dark. Let's end this quickly. As soon as the leader of the robbers shouted, those people approached the carriage with all their might. Gu Yundong shot out her second arrow, aiming at the leader of the robbers. Unfortunately, that person reacted quickly and blocked it with his knife. He only staggered slightly. Moreover, 3 people were already running in the direction of the crossbow. Gu Yundong hurriedly said to Tong Shuitao and the other 2, "Go over there." "Miss, I can help." Gu Yundong turned around and met their determined expressions. She paused and agreed. "All right, I'll leave these people to you." She thought that since she wanted them to come out and train, She couldn't keep letting them hide behind her. If they just watched and never fought, they would never be trained. However, there were 3 enemies. Yundong shot an arrow and killed one of them. Then, she bent down as if she was untying the bag on her leg. In fact, she took out 2 daggers from her space and handed them to her fellows. Be careful. If you really can't win, run. Then, she ran to the other side of the forest and shot 2 more arrows. She could tell that this group of people's target was the 4 jars of wine from the Tao family in the carriage. Therefore, there were still many people surrounding Awang and Afa. Suddenly, Awang's leg was slashed and kicked. He was sent flying and fainted. However, the robber did not give up and slashed at his neck with a knife. Yundong's expression changed slightly. She quickly aimed at him and shot an arrow. As a result, she didn't pay enough attention to Afa, who had also been stabbed. Yundong was a little vexed. Although crossbow bolts were convenient, and she had enough arrowheads, they were only suitable for long-range sneak attacks. It was troublesome and time-consuming to reload. Yundong did not have much time. Seeing that 2 people were about to attack Afa, Yundong could not care less and ran out of the forest. Shao Qingyuan was the first to see her. He frowned slightly and walked towards her as he fought. Yundong held a long-handled watermelon knife that was specially used to cut zombies in her previous life. She aimed it at the back of the person who wanted to kill Afa. Then, she jumped up onto the carriage. The reins of the carriage had already been cut off. This was to prevent the robbers from taking the carriage away. Yundong blocked the knife as she reached into the carriage. He touched the goods inside and put them away slightly. The 4 jars of wine were all put into her space. Then, she jumped down from the carriage as if nothing had happened and slashed at a robber in front of her. She deliberately let the other robber into the carriage. Afa and escort Wang saw it, and their expressions changed drastically. They rushed over to guard it. Unexpectedly, when the robber lifted the curtain, he only saw an empty carriage. However, his back was slashed by Shao Qingyuan, who had rushed behind him. Chapter 437. How could there be no goods? B0s and Vel. CM the robber endured the pain and rolled down from the carriage. Then he shouted at the robber leader, "Boss, we've been tricked. There's nothing in the carriage." The boss was stunned. "What did you say?" "The carriage is empty. We've been tricked." The boss' expression changed drastically. He looked at the situation in front of him. Only one of the escorts had fallen, but his side had suffered heavy losses. If they continued fighting, they would not be able to gain anything, especially when there were no goods. Therefore, he suddenly forced escort Wang back with a slash and said to the others, "Retreat first." The robbers were already a little tired from fighting. Seeing this, they all turned to run. The escorts did not chase after him. Escort Wang hurriedly went to look at Awang, who was lying on the ground. Seeing that he was still breathing, Escort Wang heaved a sigh of relief. When other escorts had come to take care of him, he came to look at the carriage without a word. The robber just said that there was no stock in the carriage. How could there be no stock? Could it be that someone had already taken it away? The main mission of an escort was to protect the goods. He could lose his life, but he could not lose the goods. Seeing that he was about to get into the carriage, Yundong immediately went up. When no one was paying attention, she put all 4 jars of wine back. Therefore, when escort Wang lifted the curtain of the carriage, he saw that there was no problem with the goods they wanted to protect this time. The goods stayed inside, quietly like sleeping children. He was dumbfounded. He lowered the curtain of the carriage and opened it again in disbelief. He was relieved to see that the goods were still there. Strange, the goods are clearly still here. Why did the robber say that there was nothing? Yundong pretended that she did not know anything and said, "Maybe he saw wrongly? Or maybe that person was not in cahoots with the robbers and deliberately said that." Escort Wang did not know how to explain it, so he could only accept this explanation for the time being. Only Shao Qingyuan quietly glanced at Yundong. When the robber approached the carriage, he was afraid that Yundong would be in danger, so he chased after him. Therefore, when that person lifted the curtain to take a look, he knew very well if there was anything inside. But Shao Qingyuan did not say anything. He just walked to Gu Yundong's side and sized her up. "Are you injured?" Gu Yundong shook her head. "I'm fine." The next moment, she frowned. "Are you injured?" Shao Qingyuan's arm had been cut. It did not look very deep, but the blood had stained a large part of his sleeve. "Miss, young master, we're back." At this moment, Mao and the other two ran out of the forest quickly. It seemed that they had already dealt with the two robbers and were not injured. Gu Yundong could not care less. She quickly went to her carriage to take down the medical kit that she had prepared. Then, she cut the fabric on Shao Qingyuan's arm with a pair of scissors and washed his wound. After disinfecting it with alcohol, she carefully applied medicine and wrapped it in gauze. She wrapped the wound up like a dumpling, layer by layer, just like when his palm was scratched. Shao Qingyuan quietly let her move. He looked at her lowered eyes and smiled in satisfaction. However, this peace was soon broken. There was an escort calling Awakens' name in a panic. The situation looked terrible. Gu Yundong and Shao Qingyuan turned around and saw that Awakens had already woken up. However, his face was pale as he spat out a few mouthfuls of blood. He was not the only one who was injured. All the escorts present were injured. Even Escort Wang was limping. Chapter 438. What Shao Qingyuan did B0's and Vel. CM Gu Yundong hurriedly ran over to check on Awang. However, she was not a doctor. Although she had prepared a complete medical kit, it was obvious that Awang had suffered internal injuries. The escort agency had also prepared all kinds of medicine for injuries, but the medicine for internal injuries had been knocked to the ground in the fight just now. At this moment, they had all been trampled. On the other hand, Shao Qingyuan went forward and looked at Awang carefully. Then, he turned around and got into the carriage. After a while, he took out a small porcelain bottle and handed it to Escort Wang. "This is a pill I made myself. It's for internal injuries. If you trust me, you can give it a try." "You made your own pills?" Not only Escort Wang, but even Gu Yundong was shocked. "No. Since when did he know how to make pills?" Escort Wang was a little hesitant, but Awang could not help but spit out another mouthful of blood. The situation was a little bad. He gritted his teeth. Seeing that Awang agreed, he directly let him eat it. Gu Yundong immediately looked at Awang nervously. He was a little excited. Shao Qingyuan actually knew how to make medicine. Was he so talented? Shao Qingyuan quietly held her hand, but Gu Yundong did not notice. The medicine seemed to be very good. After Awang ate it, he felt much better. Although his face was still pale and he was in low spirits, he felt that it was not as difficult to breathe as before. Everyone heaved a sigh of relief. The others had all suffered external injuries, so everyone was experienced. Awang was taken to the carriage, and someone took care of the aftermath. However, Escort Wang and the others were very curious. Why would someone come to rob them? The Tao family's 4 jars of wine actually attracted the robbers to barge into the official road openly. This was not ordinary at all. As Escort Wang bandaged his wound, he said, "Ever since the disaster, the road from the Xuanhe Prefecture to the Qingyuan Prefecture has been very calm. I've never heard of anyone robbing the travelers here. Furthermore, these people attacked without saying a word. Their goal was very clear. It was the Tao family's 4 jars of wine. What's the name of that wine? If it's really that valuable, why would the Tao family hand it to our escort agency? Moreover, they didn't demand the number of escorts and just let us go." Gu Yundong was also thinking that this was indeed very contradictory. Are those people the Tao family's enemies? Perhaps the valuable things that the Tao family really wanted to give were not here. Was handing them over to the escort agency just a smokescreen? There was no problem with the wine. The 4 jars of wine were personally loaded into the carriage by the escorts after they examined them. Tao Feng had been to the bodyguard agency before, but he had never had the chance to come into contact with alcohol. Escort Wang also had a headache. "Forget it. This has nothing to do with us. We just have to deliver the goods as soon as possible. We won't rest tonight. We'll travel through the night." As he spoke, he looked at Gu Yundong. who had no objections. Everyone quickly tidied up the things. There was no more porridge to eat. Yundong felt that it was a pity. She could only take out her stock, including dried meat, fruits, and steamed buns. Everyone would eat them to fill their stomachs. The carriage sped up, but Yundong was in the carriage and looked at Shao Qingyuan curiously. "What is it? When did you make that medicine? I've never heard of you studying medicine." This person knew how to hunt, practice martial arts, and could read. He was already a rarely capable person in Yongfu village. Moreover, he had worked hard to make these. Yundong had always known that he was very good, but she had never heard of him dabbling in pharmaceuticals. Chapter 439. Hugging Again, B0s and Vel. CM Shao Qingyuan smiled. "I've never learned it." A question mark slowly appeared in Yundong's mind. "Do you still remember the medical book you gave me?" He was referring to the medical book that Yundong had copied from Song Dajiang. At that time, Yundong had given it to him so that he could read it and remember the herbs inside. If he saw the herbs in the mountains in the future, he would not miss them. At that time, Shao Qingyuan remembered the book after reading it once. It made Yundong feel defeated. After that, the book was left with him. In addition to the medicinal ingredients recorded in the book, there were also a few common formulas written at the end. I tried according to the words written on it and happened to make such a medicine to treat internal injuries. Later, I fed this medicine to the wild rabbit. There was no problem, so I took it to an old doctor in the county. After the old doctor saw it, he bought 2 small bottles. Yundong's mouth was wide open in disbelief. Wait, he made it just because he saw the formula. Moreover, the old doctor even bought the pills from him? What's wrong? Shao Qingyuan held her hand. Yundong suddenly pounced on him and hugged his waist with a happy smile on her face. Shao Qingyuan was stunned. Then, he wrapped his arms around her waist and pressed her tightly into his arms. His voice was low. "Are you happy?" "Of course I'm happy. I'll ask Dr. Song later and get him to find some other medical books for you to read. I didn't know that your talent was here." Shao Qingyuan lowered his eyes slightly and looked at the top of her head with burning eyes. He did not know if he was talented or not. He only knew that while he had nothing to do in the past, he should not let this situation go. Since he was going to marry her, he had to make a career. In the future, they would have children. He had to plan for the future of raising his wife and children. He would not try to become a scholar. It had only been nearly 2 years since he started to read. In the past, he did not have the time to read in the Leaf family. It was only after the old man of the Leaf family died that he went out to find work and slowly learned. He practiced martial arts so that he could fight back and knock people down when others bullied him. At first, he had stayed in the mountains for too long and fought with many animals to train himself. Later, he trained with the escorts of the escort agency and had encountered people in the martial arts world who taught him a few moves. In the past, someone had advised him to join the army, but he did not have the intention to make contributions. Now, he would not go either. It was easy to join the army, but it would take years. If his wife was taken away by other men, he would not be able to find her. Because of this, Shao Qingyuan also spent a period of time anxiously until he saw the medical book. He did not want to be a pure doctor. He wanted to be a pharmaceutical merchant. If he became a big pharmaceutical merchant, not only would he be able to treat people, but he would also have power. The internal injury medicine, this time, was the first medicine he made. There would be more and more in the future. Yundong, he called her softly. Yundong was suddenly stunned. Was this the first time he had called her by her name? She felt her ears itch and some joy welled up in him. However, Shao Qingyuan hugged her even more tightly. If you can't find Bai Musi when you go to Wanqing Prefecture this time, there's no need to be anxious. Perhaps we can use another medicine to treat Auntie's illness. He'll work hard to read books and study medicinal herbs. Therefore, there are some things that you can let me help you share. Yundong blinked and grabbed the hem of his shirt. After a long time, she said in a low voice, "Okay." Chapter 440. Going to Wanqing Prefecture alone, B0s and Vel. CM the carriage rolled forward. It did not rest much along the way. At night, Yundong fell asleep in Shao Qingyuan's arms. Shao Qingyuan looked at her smiling face and couldn't help but think of the scene in the day. He was sure that he hadn't seen wrongly when the 4 jars of wine suddenly disappeared and appeared again. He didn't know what kind of trick she had used to fool the robbers and him, but she clearly had no intention of saying it, so he didn't ask. The carriage arrived at Qingyuan Prefecture on the morning of the 3rd day. They did not encounter any robbers along the way, and everyone heaved a sigh of relief. Awang was much better. He ate 2 more pills given by Shao Qingyuan. They were indeed effective. Because of this, Escort Wang even bought a small bottle from him. Yundong and Shao Qingyuan were separated at the city gate. She had no intention of entering the city. Shao Qingyuan could only remind her to be careful on the road. Then, he frowned and accompanied her for a long distance before returning. When he entered the city again, it was already noon. Yundong only left with Tong Shuitao. Shao Qingyuan wanted her to bring Mao, but she did not agree. She had always been unwilling to bring too many people around for help. It was enough to have Tong Shuitao by her side. Mao and Zhu were men, so it was inconvenient. Tong Shuitao was not used to not traveling with the convoy. She drove the carriage and let her lady rest in the carriage. She was a little nervous and excited. Wanqing Prefecture was relatively close to Qingyuan Prefecture. They rushed and arrived at the city gate in more than 10 days. When they arrived, it was already evening. The carriage barely entered the city before the city gate closed. Even though it was already this hour, Wanqing Prefecture was still very lively. Compared to Yongning Prefecture, which had experienced famine, and Qingyuan Prefecture, which had experienced chaos, this place was more than a little prosperous. However, there were probably many refugees who had come to Wanqing Prefecture back then. Now, there were many people on the streets who looked down and out while trying to get a job. "Miss, where are we staying tonight?" Tong Shuitao asked Yundong, who was also sitting on the shaft of the carriage and sizing up the street scenery on both sides. "Ask if there's a Huimin Medical Center here." Tong Shuitao responded and got off the carriage. She found a shop assistant who was still working and asked. Unexpectedly, the waiter shook his head. "I've been working in this prefectural city for 3 years, but I've never heard of Huimin Medical Center. Miss, can you ask someone else?" Tong Shuitao found 2 more passers-by, who also shook their heads. She could only run back in disappointment. "Miss, they said that this clinic doesn't exist in the prefectural city." Yundong frowned. Be it the Shuanha Prefecture, the Qingyuan Prefecture, or even the Yongning Prefecture that had been rebuilt after the disaster, the Huimin Medical Center had established a branch there. Moreover, they were quite famous, but the Huimin Medical Center did not establish a branch here. When she was in Qingyuan Prefecture, she had a good relationship with shopkeeper Chao of Huimin Medical Center, especially with Song Dajiang in the middle. Shopkeeper Chao even gave her a letter when she left. He said that Huimin Medical Center was branched all over Dajiang. If she needed any help in the future, she could ask the medical center for help. With this letter, Huimin Medical Center could make things easier for her. However, she did not expect Wanqing Prefecture to not have it. "Then let's go. Let's find an inn to stay in first. Tomorrow, we'll ask around about the Xian family." "Of course, my lady." The carriage finally stopped at the entrance of a hotel called Uli Inn. Yundong had booked 2 rooms. She still wanted her privacy. When the waiter brought them upstairs, she still did not give up and asked, "Is there a Huimin Medical Center in Wanqing Prefecture?" Chapter 441. Someone is following us. The waiter was stunned for a moment. He thought for a moment and said, "I don't think so. However, the prefectural city is so big. The Huimin Medical Center that you mentioned might be hidden in an alley. I'm not very knowledgeable. Should I help you ask around later?" "Thank you." Yundong smiled at him. Before she left, she had specially given him a tip. The waiter's face lit up. As expected, he became even more attentive. Tong Shuitao looked at his back and said, "This waiter is really meticulous. That's why you can only be envious when others get rewards." Yundong teased her and entered the house without looking back. Tong Shuitao immediately became a little dejected and carried the things in her hand into the room. Yuan was not far from the city gate. Yundong was only resting for the night. She would definitely keep looking tomorrow. The waiter was really responsible. Later, after she finished eating, he even came over and told her about what he had found out. I've asked the shopkeeper and the night watchman. There's indeed no Huimin Medical Center. Yundong thanked him and did not dwell on this matter. She rested early that day. The next morning, after breakfast, she asked the waiter where Xian Manor was. The Xian Manor was quite famous in the Wanqing Prefecture. The waiter immediately pointed in a certain direction, but it was a little far. The manor was in the west of the city. Yundong took Tong Shuidao to the west of the city and found an inn nearby. She then went out and planned to walk around the Xian residence. According to the waiter, the Xian family was very famous in Wanqing Prefecture because the Xian family was not only rich, but also powerful. Putting everything else aside, the second young master of the Xian family had married the daughter of the Prefecture magistrate of Wanqing Prefecture and was in-laws with the Prefecture magistrate. Not to mention that when the late emperor traveled in the south more than 20 years ago, when he arrived at Wanqing Prefecture, it was the Xian Prefecture who received him. Even if the late emperor was not a good person, the Xian family had such glorious deeds. They could do whatever they wanted in the prefectural city. Hence, when she recalled that Song Dajiang asked her to buy musi from the Xian family if she could, she wanted to hammer him to death. She was indeed considered rich now, but that was only compared to the villagers of Yongfu village. Compared to the Xian family, they did not care about all her assets, okay? How could she buy it? Since she couldn't buy it, she could only think of another way. She really hoped that the head of the Xian family would be like Peng Zhongfei back then, a person who could be duped into obediently taking out things. Yundong sighed. However, after circling around the entrance of the Xian manor, she decided to return to the inn first. It was better to think about it at length. Tong Shuitao had no idea what her mistress was thinking. Wherever her mistress went, she would follow. When the two of them returned from the Xian manor and were about to reach the inn, Tong Shuitao suddenly frowned. Yundong narrowed her eyes and stopped in her tracks. Tong Shuitao quickly walked to her side and whispered into her ear, "Miss, someone is following us. Does the Xian family know that we're plotting against them?" The corners of Yundong's mouth twitched. "Aren't you thinking too highly of the Xian family?" She shook her head. "No, this person's tracking methods are clumsy. He was discovered immediately. So what do we do? Go down that alley." Yundong gestured and glanced to the left. Tong Shuitao nodded, and the two of them continued forward as if nothing had happened. When they reached the alley and entered, they turned around and waited for the other party to arrive. As expected, there were no surprises at all. The people behind followed closely into the alley. Chapter 442. What did you say? My father unexpectedly. When he looked up, the man saw Yundong and Tong Shuitao's sneering expressions and Tong Shuitao's provocative look. But in the next moment, Yundong's expression disappeared. Tong Shuitao was also stunned. This was because the other party was an old man with patches all over his clothes. He looked down and out. In fact, Yundong felt that this person looked familiar, but she could not remember. The old man was also stunned. He hesitated for a while before asking in a hoarse voice, "Are you Miss Gu?" He did not dare to recognize her. After all, she looked well-dressed and rich. She did not look like someone he knew at all. "My surname is Gu, and you are..." Yundong thought for a moment, and someone suddenly flashed across her mind. She widened her eyes and asked, "Are you Grandpa you?" Joy flashed across the other party's face. "You're really Yundong?" "Yes, it's me." Yundong really did not expect that the old man she had met outside the Qingyuan Prefecture would bump into her again. She took a few steps forward and walked to Grandpa Ye's side. "I didn't expect to see you again. How have you been recently?" Great, I'm fine." Just as he finished speaking, there was a gurgling sound in his stomach. Grandpa Yu immediately felt embarrassed. "I had some porridge in the morning. I went out for a walk and it was gone. There's a wonton shop over there. Let's go eat a bowl of wontons." No need. We'll just go home and eat." Gu Yundong had already helped him over. It's been more than half a year since we last met. I'll catch up with you. I also want to try the wontons here. Grandpa Yu did not say anything else. He knew that she had always been kind. Before she left last time, she gave him a basket of food, which allowed the family to make it to Wanqing Prefecture. At the wonton stall, Gu Yundong ordered 3 bowls of wontons. Grandpa Yu was indeed hungry. When he saw the white and fat wonton floating in the bowl, he couldn't help but wipe his face and lower his head to eat. Gu Yundong waited for him to finish eating before asking, "Grandpa Yu, how did you recognize me? Wasn't her image too different from before? Why was Grandpa Yu's eyes so sharp?" Grandpa Yu wiped his mouth and couldn't help but laugh. "I've been squatting over there, looking for a job. When I heard the two of you talking, I felt that it sounded very familiar, so I couldn't help but follow behind. Actually, I didn't expect it to really be you. I was just asking when you discovered me. I didn't expect." As he spoke, he could not help but sigh. Then, he looked up and asked, "By the way, where are you staying now?" "At the Shuanha Prefecture." Grandpa Yu was stunned. "Shuanha Prefecture? You went to the Shuanha Prefecture back then?" "Yes." Gu Yindong nodded. "I originally planned to come here." She lied. In fact, her goal was the Shuanha Prefecture from the beginning. She just did not tell anyone. But at that time, I saw too many people come into Wanqing Prefecture. I thought that with so many people running over, what if it became chaotic again? So I went to Shuanha Prefecture. "I see." Grandpa Yu muttered in a daze. No wonder. No wonder we couldn't catch up to you when we sped up. No wonder your father couldn't find you no matter how hard he searched. Gu Yundong stopped wiping the corners of her mouth and suddenly looked up at him in disbelief. "Grandpa Yu, what did you say? My father?" Chapter 443. "So Gu Dajiang is here." Grandpa Yu was shocked by her sudden raised voice. Gu Yundong could not help but stand up. "I didn't hear wrongly. Did you just say my father? Have you seen my father?" Seeing this, Grandpa Yu nodded. "Yes, your father is in Wanqing Prefecture and has been looking for you." Gu Yundong's breathing suddenly quickened. The surprise caught her off guard, and her hands began to tremble slightly. She hurriedly asked, "Then where is he now? Where is my father now? Can you take me to him?" "He went out yesterday and hasn't returned yet." After Grandpa Yu finished speaking, he saw her frown and looked disappointed. He hurriedly added, "But you don't have to worry. Your father usually comes back every 2 to 3 days. He heard that there was news of you yesterday and left in a hurry. I didn't have time to ask him where he was going. If he doesn't find you, he will still come back. He lives in the same courtyard as us. You'll see him in a day or 2. Gu Yundong heaved a sigh of relief and sat back down. The joy on her face was still on. Tong Shueitao, who was beside her, was also extremely excited. Unexpectedly, after they had just arrived at Wanqing Prefecture, while they were at a loss as to how to buy Musi, the heavens gave them such a huge surprise. Great! There was finally news of Old Master. Gu Yundong calmed down a little and asked the owner of the wonton shop to pour 2 cups of tea. She then spoke again. "Grandpa Yu, can you tell me about my father? How did you meet him? How is he now? Your father has really suffered a lot to find you." After receiving the help of Gu Yundong's basket of food, the 3 of them decided to come to Wanqing Prefecture. Initially, Gu Yundong's family had set off less than half an hour earlier than them. They had thought that they could catch up to her if they were fast. They could travel together so that they could take care of each other. Unexpectedly, they never met again, but that was normal. At that time, there were too many people coming this way. It was crowded, and they were all in a hurry to travel. It was indeed not easy to meet again. Later on, they arrived at Wanqing Prefecture. However, the city gate of Wanqing Prefecture was also closed, preventing anyone from entering. However, even at the city gate, there were people here who offered porridge for free. They could last for a while. The Yu family had also looked for Gu Yundong, but there had been no news. It was only when the new emperor ascended the throne, the city gate opened, and a new order was issued that they finally heaved a sigh of relief. Just like Gu Yundong's choice back then, the Yu family did not intend to return to their hometown, so they took root in Wanqing Prefecture. Unfortunately, they had no backing or money. In the end, they were assigned to a remote village by the local government. Not only was that place remote, but it was also especially poor. It was very difficult for men and women to marry, and the land was very barren. If they stayed in that village, they would probably live a hard life for the rest of their lives. After a discussion, the Yu family decided to register in the village. However, they went to the prefectural city to find work. At the very least, they had to try their luck. They still had some money on them, so they rented a small courtyard. However, it was easier said than done to find work in the prefectural city for those who had no roots, especially since there were many refugees who had escaped from the famine here. They could endure hardship and demand low wages. Now, Grandpa Yesun was helping someone move the goods. His grandson was working in a small shop, but the salary was pitifully low. Even so, he cherished this job. After all, if he didn't do it, there would be countless people waiting in line to do it. Chapter 444. Where my father lives, they met Dajiang more than a month after they settled down. At first, Grandpa Yes' son, who was helping people move the goods, overheard someone asking Yundong's name when he was chatting with someone. At that time, he did not know who this person was, but Yundong's name was too familiar. She could be considered their family's benefactor. He went over and asked Dajiang a few questions. Only then did he realize that this was Yundong's father. Didn't Miss Gu look for her father at the city gate of Qingyuan Prefecture? When your father heard that we had seen you, he was overjoyed. Grandpa, you said, unfortunately, at that time, we all thought that you had come to Wanqing Prefecture, so your father has been staying here to search for you. He does everything. He followed my son to carry goods, wash horses, and pour night urine. He goes wherever there's work. The money he earned is all used to find you. He asked the peddlers on the streets to help him. He went to the government office and gave money to the constables and asked the passing escorts to look for you. The copper coins on him are only enough for him to eat. Originally, he planned to sleep under the bridge in a dilapidated temple. Those places don't cost money. We dragged him to live in the small courtyard we rented. Back then, you left us a basket of sweet potatoes and saved the lives of our family of 3. When we saw your father, could we not give him a place to live? Yundong was stunned. How is that possible? How could Dajiang be in such dire straits? He can read and is very smart. My father used to be an accountant. How could? Even if he was a refugee, even if it was not easy to find work in the prefecture capital, very few people could read in this day and age. It wasn't difficult for Dajiang to find a decent job with his ability. Grandpa, you sighed. But the shops and restaurants that need literate people won't allow him to run out of the prefectural city to look for people every other day. As long as Dajiang heard any news about his family, he would rush over eagerly. Unfortunately, none of it was true. Yundong clenched her fists and suddenly found it difficult to breathe. That's right. She had taken it for granted. She had always thought that she didn't have to worry about Dajiang. As long as he avoided the calamity and didn't return to the old Gu family, he would be able to live well without old Gu and patriarch Gu suppressing him. However, she ignored the fact that in Dajiang's heart, nothing could compare to his wife and children. There was nothing more urgent than finding them. Seeing that she didn't say anything, Grandpa Yu thought of her clothes and the maidservant beside her and realized that her life should be good. Now that she heard that her biological father had been suffering to find them, she definitely didn't feel good. Fortunately, the hardships are over. Wait patiently for another 2 days. Dajiang will be back soon, and you and your father will meet. From now on, your family will reunite and live a good life. Yundong took a deep breath and suppressed the bitterness in her heart. When she looked up again, there was already a smile on her lips. Yes, you're right. We'll be reunited soon. Sir, can I see where my father lives? Of course. Grandpa Yu is very happy. Come to my place. Perhaps your father will be back by the time we get home. Yundong was also looking forward to it. She gave the money to the owner of the wonton shop and helped Grandpa Yu up. Grandpa Yu waved his hand. There's no need to help me. I'm still energetic. Chapter 445. Yu family Grandpa Yu was overjoyed and strode forward to lead the way. However, this journey seemed to be a little far. By the time they arrived at his place, they had been walking for nearly 2 hours. Grandpa Yu looked a little embarrassed. He was used to walking, so he did not realize that there were 2 delicate young ladies following behind him. He had completely forgotten that Yundong had also fled all the way here. Her stamina was not inferior to his. The Yu family's courtyard was actually very remote. It could be considered a slum in the prefectural city. The surroundings were filled with indecent people, and the road was filled with potholes. One could feel all kinds of smells when they walked into the alley. The people here were dressed in shabby clothes. When they saw Yundong, who looked like a young lady from a wealthy family, everyone glanced at them. However, when they saw that it was the Yu family, some people with ill intentions could only sigh regretfully. After all, the 4 strong men of the Yu family had all fled here. They were used to seeing dead people and were not to be trifled with. Yundong and Tong Shuitao pretended not to see those gazes and entered the Yu family's courtyard without looking sideways. It was really a small courtyard. It was even smaller than Aunt Kess' house where she lived back then. There was only 1 room. Then there was the small kitchen, the outhouse, and a small courtyard. Just because it was small, the rent was cheap. Fortunately, there were only 4 men. It was fine to squeeze in the same room. In the past, the conditions were even worse when they escaped. Now, it was just a matter of adding 2 bed planks to the room. Grandpa Yu let them sit and poured water for them with 2 thick clay bowls. Then he asked, Yundong, since you've settled down in the Shuana Prefecture, why did you come to Wanqing Prefecture this time? Yundong took a sip of water. Although he did not add anything, it was still very refreshing and sweet. Grandpa Yu, you know about my mother's condition. We found a doctor to treat her. The doctor said that he was lacking an herb. Someone said that Wanqing Prefecture's Xian family had this herb, so I came over to see if they could part with it. When Grandpa Yu heard about the Xian family, he frowned. The Xian family is rich and powerful. They're not to be trifled with. They don't lack money. It's difficult to get them to give you medicine. It was difficult, but she had to try no matter how difficult it was. Grandpa Yu, do you know who has the highest status in the Xian family? Grandpa Yu thought for a moment. It should be that second young master. I heard that second young master married the daughter of the prefecture magistrate. That eldest young master is not in good health. He never goes out. When old master Xian goes out, he always brings that second young master along. It seems that more than half of the Xian family's businesses are managed by second young master. Yundong pursed his lips. How can I meet that second young master? Grandpa Yu was shocked. That's hard to say. You want to meet second young master Xian? Ask him for the herb? It was probably impossible to buy it. Yundong wanted to understand the second young master first and see if she could find a breakthrough from him. As she was thinking, a voice suddenly came from outside. Father him back. That person's voice was loud and clear, but he was very thin. When he entered, he was stunned when he saw the 2 girls in the house. He immediately walked out in embarrassment and patted the dust off his body before entering again. Father, they are... This is Yundong. Don't you recognize her? Grandpa Yu asked happily. Yundong also stood up and greeted. Uncle Yu, long time no see. Uncle Yu widened his eyes and looked at Yundong in shock. This is Dajiang's daughter? Chapter 446. Uncle Yes Help Yes. Grandpa Yu looked proud, as if Yundong was his granddaughter. Uncle Yu looked at Yundong a few times, but he could not associate her with a sloppy person whose gender was unknown. It had only been half a year. They were still dressed in shabby, thin, and weak clothes, but the girl from the Gu family looked like a young lady from a rich family. This disparity simply made people unable to be jealous. However, Uncle Yu was still very happy to see her. Grandpa Yu told him the process of meeting Yundong and finally talked about the Xian residence. When he heard that Yundong wanted to see second young master, Uncle Yu could not help but frown. I've seen second young master once. Last time, someone wanted to build a relationship with the Xian family and specially stop second young master. Second young master did not even give him the corner of his eye before that person was dragged away by his guards. If you want to see him, you may have to do what? Uncle Yu glanced at Gu Yundong and coughed twice. He said in embarrassment, "The second young master of the Xian family is vulnerable to beautiful women." As soon as he finished speaking, he was slapped hard by Grandpa Yu. "What are you talking about? Do you want Yundong to seduce that pervert?" "Father, I didn't mean that. That second young master is a lustful man, but his wife isn't easy to get along with either. She's also the daughter of the Prefecture magistrate. I'm just reminding the Gu girl not to appear in front of second young master rashly, so that she can avoid trouble." The Gu girl was very good-looking now. If she went to look for second young master directly, it would be no different from sending herself to his bed. Gu Yundong was stunned for a moment. SH smiled and said, "Thank you for your kind intentions, Uncle Yu. I understand. I'll try my best to avoid second young master." "In that case, wouldn't it be even more difficult?" She frowned and thought for a moment before asking, "Is there any way to enter the Xian residence?" "Enter the Xian residence?" This time, Grandpa Yu and Uncle Yu fell silent. After a long time, Uncle Yu thought of the basket of things on the way to escape. He gritted his teeth and said, "If you want to enter the Xian manor, I have a way." "What is it?" Gu Yundong asked hurriedly. "I know a friend who delivers vegetables to the kitchen of the Xian residence. I'll tell him. You can follow him in tomorrow morning to take a look." Gu Yundong's eyes lit up. "Really?" "Yes, but you can't walk around. If something happens and my friend is implicated, he won't care about you. Instead, he'll claim that he doesn't know you." Gu Yundong knew this rule. She did not want to implicate others. Besides, that person was only bringing her in because Uncle Yu had used a favor. She immediately nodded solemnly. "I understand." Uncle Yu glanced at her again and turned to leave. He was going to talk to his friend. Gu Yundong and her maidservant had been staying at the Yu residence. Unfortunately, the sky was about to turn dark, but Gu Dajiang still hadn't returned. The Yu family's grandson had returned and was shocked to see Gu Yundong. Seeing that it was getting late, Gu Yundong left the Yu family with Tong Shuitao. Since she knew that Gu Dajiang would return, she could only calm down and wait for him. When they went out, Uncle Yu sent them off. There were a few hooligans in the alley. When they saw Uncle Yu, they immediately felt very regretful. They could only watch Gu Yundong and her maidservant leave with burning eyes. The next morning, Gu Yundong followed Uncle Yu's instructions and went to wait outside the Xian residence. She was wearing a rough hemp garment and tied her hair up. Her chest was flattened, and her eyebrows were even thickened. She looked like a small worker. Chapter 447. Our Yundong not long after, they saw a middle-aged man and a young man pushing a cart of vegetables over. Gu Yundong hurriedly went forward. After she introduced herself, the middle-aged man silently led her forward. However, he kept a sullen expression and did not look too happy. This did not matter. Gu Yundong just had to go in and take a look. Tong Shuitao waited in the alley beside them. She was worried. Even though Gu Yundong asked her to wait for Gu Dajiang at the Yu residence, she refused. The middle-aged man pushed the vegetables into the back door of the Xian residence. When he saw the butler, he immediately put on a smile and praised him. Gu Yundong did not comment on this. It was just for the sake of living. There was still a distance from the backyard to the kitchen. Although Gu Yundong's head was lowered, the corners of his eyes kept drifting around. The Xian manor was indeed as rich and powerful as the rumors said. Not to mention the maids and servants who came and went. Even the corridor they saw along the way, be it the workmanship or the carving, was very exquisite. Coupled with the trays held by the maidservant who walked past her, there were either jade bowls or jade plates on them. It was simply extravagant. Compared to them, she was simply world apart. She was not even qualified to be looked at. Gu Yundong's heart ached. Suddenly, Gu Yundong's ears pricked up when he heard the low voices of two maids. That person is really pitiful. He was tortured by second young madam and beaten up by second young master, who asked him to recognize the wrong person. Sigh, poor thing. Cough, cough. The butler who was leading the way suddenly coughed heavily. The two maids were shocked, and immediately shut their mouths. They lowered their heads and quickly walked away. Yundong lowered her head and pretended not to hear her. Not long after, the few of them walked into the kitchen. The butler was very arrogant. He ordered Yundong to move baskets of vegetables down. Put it here. Hey, be gentle. You're so clumsy. You can't even do a good job. Why are these vegetables so disheveled? They're all over the place. The chef will nag again later. Place these vegetables in order. Why are you casually placing this basket here? There are people coming and going. What if they trip? If they're holding something master wants in their hands and trip themselves over, you won't be able to compensate. Yundong was speechless. She endured it. However, no matter how much she wanted to endure it, she did not even have the chance to leave the kitchen. It was really annoying. However, the worker who came with the middle-aged man thought that she was here to snatch work from him. He had disliked her since they first met, and now he was even going against her. Chapter 448. Dajiang's voice. Yundong widened her eyes and looked at the woman in shock. She almost responded when someone called her name. Fortunately, she immediately realized that the woman was not referring to her. The old woman in the kitchen quickly brought over a pot of bird's nest and smiled brightly. It's here. It was stewed early in the morning. Hurry up and send it to concubine Gu. Yundong was speechless. She almost spat out a mouthful of blood. Her surname was Gu, and her name was also Yundong. Not only did they have the same given name, but they also had the same surname. The woman snorted coldly. Our Yundong is the person's second young master loves the most now. All of you are snobs. You don't take her seriously at all. I just asked you to stew the bird's nest. You've been delaying for so long, and you wanted to come over personally to get it. If there's a next time, it'll sell all of you. With that, she carried the bird's nest and walked away arrogantly. As soon as she disappeared, the few old women in the kitchen spat at her back. You really think too highly of yourself. Your daughter is just a concubine, and you still think she's a proper master? How shameless. Just wait. Second young mistress is not free yet. When she's free, who knows how long concubine Gu will be able to hold the position. Seeing how brazen they were and how they dared to complain in front of the delivery man, it was obvious that they did not take concubine Gu and her mother seriously. The corners of Yundong's mouth twitched. Hearing concubine Gu made her feel uncomfortable all over. The steward had just finished speaking to the middle-aged man and let them leave. It was too late for Yundong to find an opportunity to leave. She could only frown and leave the kitchen in defeat. However, she learned that the second young master of the Xian family had taken in a new concubine who was her namesake. Forget it. That's not important. They just had the same name. How could she not allow it? Second young master seemed to dote on this concubine quite a lot now. Perhaps she could start from her. Yundong thought as she followed the middle-aged man out of the back door of the Xian residence. As soon as he came out, the middle-aged man said to Yundong, "All right, I've done what brother you asked of me. I've returned the favor I owed him. That's all. You don't have to follow me anymore." Yundong nodded. "Thank you. No need." The middle-aged man asked the worker beside him to push the empty cart away. When the worker saw that Yundong was not fighting with him for the job, he immediately became happy. Before he left, he even gave her a smile. Yundong sighed and walked towards the alley. Tong Shuitao was still there. Unexpectedly, after taking a few steps, she suddenly saw a group of people gathered there, pointing and talking about something. Yundong frowned. Tong Shuitao had already seen her and hurried over. "Miss, you're out? How are you? Are you all right?" She looked Yundong up and down nervously. Tong Shuitao was also wearing men's clothes. After all, she had wanted to follow them in at the beginning. Unfortunately, her plan had failed before she could say it. Yundong shook her head and pointed at the crowd. "What happened there? I think someone was thrown out by the servants of the Xian family just now. It's said that he was beaten. It's quite serious." Yundong suddenly recalled what the two maids had said. He must have been beaten up by the second young master of the Xian family, right? She had no intention of meddling in other people's business. She brought Tong Shuidao and walked straight through the crowd. However, just as she passed by that person, a faint voice suddenly sounded in her ear. Yundong. Chapter 449. Finally meeting Gu Dajiang. Gu Yundong's ears were sharp. When she heard these two words, her body stiffened. She suddenly turned her head to look at the person lying on the ground. With someone blocking her way, she immediately pulled that person away roughly. Then, she squatted down and brushed away the hair that covered half of that person's face. In the next moment, when she saw the true appearance of the man on the ground, her hands began to tremble violently. "Miss, what's wrong?" Tong Shuitao saw that something was wrong with her and hurriedly asked in a low voice. Gu Yundong's throat was tight, and she could not even make sound. She suddenly grabbed her trembling right wrist and pressed it against the man's neck with great difficulty. She felt that the pulse under her fingers was still strong. Only then did she force herself to calm down. She struggled to help the man up. The onlookers quickly advised, "Little brother, this is someone thrown out by the Xian family. Don't be a busybody, lest you get into trouble." Gu Yundong suddenly raised her head and glared fiercely at that person. Her throat rolled, and she finally spat out a cold word. "Scram." That person tried to persuade her out of goodwill, but was scolded instead. He was instantly annoyed, but when he saw Gu Yundong's fierce and cold expression, he was a little terrified and left dejectedly with his head lowered. Gu Yundong lowered her head again and said to Tong Shuitao, "Come, be careful. Carry him back to the inn first." "Okay, Mississippi." Tong Shuitao was strong. She hurriedly squatted down and carefully helped the man onto her back. She did not dare to use too much strength. She tried her best to bend over to make the unconscious person on her back feel more comfortable. After walking for a while, Tong Shuitao asked, "Miss, who is this?" Gu Yundong's nerves were still tense. The corners of her mouth were tightly pursed, and bloodlust surged in her eyes. She took a long time to answer Tong Shuitao, but her voice was dry and hoarse. "He's my father." Tong Shuitao's eyes widened in shock. Yes, it's old master." "Yes." Gu Yundong never expected to see Gu Dajiang under such circumstances. The man leaning on Tong Shuitao's back was extremely thin. His image was even worse than what Grandpa you had said about Gu Dajiang. He had been thrown out by the Xian family and beaten up like this. Gu Yundong's face was ashen, and she clenched her fists tightly. The three of them quickly arrived at the inn. The waiter still remembered Gu Yundong's attire before she went out today. At that time, he found it strange, but this was the guest's privacy, so he did not ask further. However, he had a deep impression of it. Hence, when he saw her return with an unconscious person on her back, he quickly went up to her. "Miss, what's wrong? Please help me find a doctor." Gu Yundong gave the waiter a piece of silver and helped Gu Dajiang upstairs. The door opened, and the two of them carefully placed the man on the bed. Perhaps because it affected his wound, Gu Dajiang couldn't help but groan as he lay on the bed. His brows were furrowed. "Be gentle," Gu Yundong said hurriedly. Seeing his uncomfortable expression, she felt helpless for the first time. She didn't know how to move her fingers to minimize Gu Dajiang's pain. Fortunately, the waiter immediately brought the doctor over. This was the doctor from the nearest medical center. His medical skills were quite brilliant. The moment he entered, he saw Gu Dajiang covered in blood. He frowned and instructed Gu Yundong, "Go get a basin of hot water first." Chapter 450. The scarred Gu Dajiang Tong Shuitao quickly turned around to get hot water. Only then did Dr. Yu carefully check the wounds on Gu Dajiang's body. His clothes had been removed by the scissors, so Gu Yundong could not look at him anymore. She took a deep breath and turned around. The waiter stayed to help. As he followed the doctor's instructions, he whispered, "Oh my God, why is he like this? It's so bloody. Will he be unable to move his lower body in the future? Oh my God, why is there such a big wound on his shoulder? Is it because he was scalded? It's all blistered. No, who did this? This is too inhumane." Did his finger break from someone stepping on it? Yundong's back was facing the bed. The more she listened, the uglier her expression became. The veins on the back of her hand throbbed, and her eyes were cold. Doctor, you could not help but reprimand him. Shut up. What are you shouting for? Give me the scissors. The waiter didn't dare to speak. He didn't know who the person on the bed was, but it didn't seem to have much to do with that girl, right? After all, this person was thin and had a rough face. He looked like one of those laborers. There was no telling who this guy had offended, but he was probably saved by Miss Gu out of kindness. Tong Shuitao brought hot water over. Seeing that Miss' expression was not right, she quickly helped her sit down and said softly, Miss, don't worry. Old master will be fine. Yundong closed his eyes slightly. I know. Faint movements came from behind. The waiter stopped making a fuss and only asked some questions occasionally. But these words still reached Yundong's ears, and her fingers tightened. After a long time, he heard Dr. Yes' voice. Mississippi. He had heard the waiter call her Mississippi. This patient's injuries are a little serious. They'll treat him for the time being, but the medicine to be used later is probably not cheap. You, here. Yundong took out a banknote. Give him the best medicine to minimize his pain. Don't leave any future troubles. If you need anything, just tell me. I sure. Seeing that she did not look very well dressed, Dr. Yu was a little worried before. When he saw that she had taken out 100 taels of silver, he hurriedly agreed. The waiter could not help but widen his eyes. Wasn't this someone she had casually saved on the way? Wasn't this too generous? The doctor had already walked to the table. He took a brush and paper and wrote down the prescription. Then, he handed it to the waiter. Please make a trip to our family's medical center to get these medicine. The waiter quickly took it and agreed happily. He was smart and knew that this girl seemed to value the man on the bed. If he helped her run more errands, he would definitely be rewarded. Chapter 451. Miss something. The third injury is the injury on his back. Dr. Yu sighed. This is the most serious. The person who hit him is not skilled. His external injuries are serious, and his internal injuries are not easy either. Internal injuries? Yundong immediately thought of the bottle of internal injuries medicine that Shao Qingyuan had given her. She quickly searched her sleeve and actually took out the small porcelain bottle from her space. She said to Dr. Yu, This is medicine for internal injuries. Take a look and see if it will conflict with the medicine you prescribed. Dr. Yu was stunned for a moment. He poured out a pill and sniffed it. Then he scratched it with his nail and tasted a bit. After a while, his eyes lit up and he hurriedly nodded. It's useful. They'll feed him one now. He took the medicine and quickly crushed it. He mixed it with water and fed it to Dajiang. Seeing that he had consciously swallowed it, the doctor heaved a sigh of relief and came back to say, You also need to pay more attention to his external injuries. This wound is prone to festering pus, and it may cause a fever. That's very dangerous. Yundong knew that if the wound was not treated properly, it was easy to get inflammation and infection, especially in this weather. One could get a fever if they were not careful. In this era, it was very easy to lose one's life if one had a fever. Dr. Yu told her all the things she needed to pay attention to. At this moment, the waiter returned with the medicine. He first took the ointment and applied it on Dajiang before getting the waiter to go to the kitchen to boil the herbs. By the time he was done, several hours had passed. Dr. Yu helped Dajiang put on his clothes before getting up to wipe his sweat. He said, It's up to him now. If there's anything wrong, get someone to look for me. If his condition improves, he'll come over tomorrow to change his medicine. Thank you, Dr. Yu. Yundong sent him out gratefully. The waiter also went downstairs smartly. After a while, he brought the food over. Miss, it's already late. You should eat lunch first. Put it down. It's been hard on you today. You should eat too. It's not hard. He'll go out first. Miss, enjoy your meal. If you have any instructions, feel free to call me. He left the room and closed the door gently. Miss, let's eat first, Tong Shuitao called her softly. It was rare for her to speak softly because Miss seemed to be in a bad mood and Master's condition was not optimistic. Gu Yundong was not in the mood to eat. She let Tong Shuitao eat first, but she walked to the bed and sat there looking at the unconscious Gu Dajiang. She suppressed the anger in her heart and slowly closed her eyes. Chapter 452. Gu Dajiang Awakens. Gu Dajiang valued relationships. He valued his family more than himself. In his heart, his wife was ignorant of the world. His eldest daughter was sentimental, and his youngest son and daughter were too young. How could such a family of 4 survive safely in the wilderness, surrounded by jackals, tigers, and leopards? Of course, he had the ability to do something, but he couldn't wait. He was afraid that if he was a little slower, he might not be able to find his wife and children again. Perhaps in Gu Dajiang's heart, he didn't dare to hope that his 4 family members were all alive. He could only think of finding as many as possible. He could not slow down. Therefore, as Grandpa Yu had said, other than the money for food, he had used all the money to find his wife and children. The corners of Gu Yundong's mouth were straight. At this moment, she finally felt the deep love Gu Dajiang gave her. "Miss, don't worry. Old Master will definitely be fine. Let's use the best medicine." Tong Shuitao had already finished eating. She turned around and saw that Miss was still sitting there motionless, as if she had suffered a huge blow. For a moment, she felt a little sad and guilty. If she had gone over to bring Old Master back to find a doctor the moment he was thrown out by the Xian family, would Old Master's injuries not have become so serious? It was all the Xian family's fault. They had gone too far. What right did they have to beat Old Master into such a state? "Miss, eat something first. After you're full, you'll have the strength to take care of Master when he wakes up, right?" Gu Yundong nodded slightly and reached out to touch Gu Dajiang's forehead. Fortunately, he did not have a fever. Only then did she sit at the table and eat. Tong Shuitao diligently fetched hot water again. Seeing that Gu Dajiang's face was covered in sweat, she carefully wiped it for him. As Gu Yundong was eating, she suddenly thought of something. "Shuitao, go to the U residence later. We agreed yesterday that we would go to the U residence when we came out of the Xian residence. It's already this hour. I'm afraid, Grandpa, you will be worried about us." Tong Shuitao also thought of this and suddenly slapped her head. "I forgot too. All right, it'll go over immediately. By the way, tell Grandpa Yu that my father has been found." After a pause, she added, "Don't say anything about him being injured." "Understood, Mississippi." After Tong Shuitao left, only Gu Yundong and Gu Dajiang were left in the room. She twisted the handkerchief again and wiped Gu Dajiang's face. Unexpectedly, just as she approached, the person in front of her suddenly opened her eyes. Gu Yundong was stunned. Gu Dajiang was also stunned. He looked at Gu Yundong with uncertainty. After a long while, he said hoarsely, "Yundong, it's me." Gu Dajiang smiled. "Why are you wearing men's clothes today? Your eyebrows have become so thick. I almost didn't recognize you." Gu Yundong pursed her lips and asked hesitantly, "Are you awake?" Gu Dajiang reached out his hand and realized that he was lying on his stomach. His body was in great pain. A sharp pain spread to his head, and cold sweat dripped down. Gu Dajiang grunted and knocked his head against the soft pillow again before closing his eyes. Gu Yundong panicked. She blurted out the name that she wanted to call him, and yet had been stuck in her throat. "Father, did you pull on your wound? What does it hurt?" Gu Dajiang's eyes widened as he looked at her in shock. Yundong. There's nothing more important than your safety. I didn't think it through back then. I didn't expect the city gate of Qingyuan Prefecture to be tightly shut, causing chaos. What about you?" Gu Yundong did not want him to continue blaming himself. She changed the topic and asked, "Why did Father come to Wanqing Prefecture?" "Actually, I went to Qingyuan Prefecture to look for you. I even met Bao Chanhua and his wife. They said that they had seen you and saw you leave the city gate with their own eyes. Unfortunately, they didn't know where you went after you left. I even went She paused and did not tell him that she had been to Gu Village. She would take it slow. So many things had happened in Gu Village. She had to tell her father, but she did not want to say it yet. Chapter 454. That woman should die. Gu Dajiang was stunned. He really didn't expect her to have been to Qingyuan Prefecture. He pursed his lips and frowned. Back then, I thought that you would wait for me in Qingyuan Prefecture, so I kept looking for you there. Later on, he lowered his voice. I bumped into your aunt later. Gu Qingyuan? Gu Yundong was flabbergasted. Isn't she dead? Dead. Gu Dajiang frowned. When did she die? She was still alive when I met her. Although he and Gu Qingyuan were siblings, their relationship was really weak. It could even be said that they had become enemies. From his tone, it was obvious. I met my uncle. He said so. However, this was not important. What happened after you met my aunt? She said that you came to Wanqing Prefecture. Actually, I didn't believe her at first. However, Gu Dajiang later asked around. There were indeed a few people who told him that they had met such a family that had gone to Wanqing Prefecture before the Qingyuan Prefecture fell into chaos. That was why he came to Wanqing Prefecture. Later on, he met the Yu family. He didn't expect the Yu family to receive Yundong's help. Even the Yu family said that they were coming this way. That was why Gu Dajiang had been looking for them in Wanqing Prefecture for more than half a year. Gu Yundong sighed inwardly. It was really a free combination of factors. They missed each other just like that. If she had gone to Wanqing Prefecture back then, wouldn't they have met sooner? However, Gu Qingyuan was the one who deserved to die. Others might have really seen them moving this way, but Gu Qingyuan knew very well back then. She had even asked Fu Ming to bring Master Qian to chase after them, and wanted to sell her nephew and niece. Anger rose in Gu Yundong's heart. It would be best if Gu Qingyuan was dead. If she was not, Gu Yundong would kill her. She snorted coldly. Seeing the fatigue flash across Gu Dajiang's face, she knew that she had said too much. She would talk about this slowly in the future. He was still injured and should be resting. She had neglected it. Father, you're still injured. It's more important to recover first. Now that we're reunited, there's plenty of time to talk in the future. I still have many things to tell you. Okay. He had found his wife and children, so he naturally had to live well. Recovering from his injuries was most important. He could not go back to see his wife and children like this. By the way, eat something first. I've been asking the waiter to prepare sweet porridge. Father, fill your stomach first. Then, drink the medicine prescribed by the doctor before you rest. As she spoke, she hurriedly opened the door and let the waiter bring the warm porridge over. Gu Dajiang looked at Gu Yundong's back and smiled. Gu Yundong fed him small bites. It was not easy for him to finish it. After drinking the medicine, he really wanted to sleep. She reached out and adjusted Gu Dajiang's pillow. His back was injured, so he could only lie on his stomach or sideways. He couldn't move too much, or it was easy to pull at his wound. Gu Dajiang was really tired and his body hurt a lot. He actually couldn't bear to close his eyes. He wanted to see his daughter more. However, he really couldn't take it anymore. As soon as he closed his eyes, he quickly fell asleep. Tong Shuitao only returned when the sky was about to turn dark. When she heard that Gu Dajiang had woken up, she immediately became happy. Miss, go and rest. Ill guard master. You keep watch for the first half of the night. They'll do it for the second. All right. Gu Yundong went to the room next door to rest, but she did not sleep well. She was always worried that something would happen to Gu Dajiang. Before midnight, she came over to replace Tong Shuitao. Fortunately, everything went smoothly. Gu Dajiang didn't have a fever, and his injuries were recovering. Chapter 455. Yundong is really good looking after dawn. Doctor Yu came over again. After showing it to Gu Dajiang, he heaved a sigh of relief. He'll change his bandage first. Continue taking the medicine I prescribed yesterday. Thank you, Dr. Yu. Gu Dajiang was in a deep sleep, but he was still woken up by the pain of changing the bandage. When Dr. Yu saw him open his eyes, he smiled kindly. How do you feel? Does it hurt anywhere? Do you feel choked or difficult to breathe? Gu Dajiang quickly realized his identity. No, other than the pain in my wound, everything else is fine. With that, he hurriedly went to look for Gu Yundong. When he saw that she was still there, he heaved a sigh of relief. Except, how did his daughter become so good-looking? She had washed off her thick eyebrows from yesterday and changed her clothes. These clothes looked expensive, and her face was rosy. She was actually more beautiful than before. After Dr. Yu changed a bandage and gave some instructions, he left. Gu Yundong walked to the edge of the bed and sat down. Seeing that Gu Dajiang was staring at her, she could not help but find it strange. "Father, what are you looking at?" Gu Dajiang paused and smiled. "Yundong is really good-looking." Gu Yundong immediately felt a little embarrassed. How can a father praise his daughter like that? Father is telling the truth. He looked very proud. Unfortunately, he was injured and couldn't even lift his head. At the thought of his injury, Gu Yundong could not help but frown. "Father, why did the Xian family hit you so ruthlessly? They almost killed you." As she asked this question, Gu Yundong's face was instantly filled with anger and a hint of killing intent. She didn't know how her father had offended the Xian family, but with her father's personality, he definitely wouldn't offend them to the point of getting himself killed. She wasn't going to let this go. Gu Dajiang lowered his eyes slightly and thought of everything in the Xian residence. He slowly closed his eyes. After a while, he looked up and smiled. "It's nothing. Am I not fine? It's over. If father doesn't want to tell me, we'll go to the Xian family to ask myself." "Yundong." Gu Yundong pursed her lips tightly and looked at him firmly. Gu Dajiang smiled bitterly. "How did you become so stubborn?" "Father, go ahead." Gu Dajiang sighed secretly and said in a low voice, "2 days ago, I heard that the second young master of the Xian family wants to take in a concubine. That concubine's surname is Gu, and her name is Gu Yundong." Gu Yundong's body suddenly froze. The words of the woman she had heard when she had disguised herself and sneaked into the kitchen of the Xian residence flashed across her mind. Yes, there was a concubine with the same name as hers in the Xian manor. Father thought, it was me? No wonder. No wonder he was unwilling to say it just now. Was he afraid that she would blame herself? Gu Dajiang nodded. "I heard that concubine Gu is from the countryside and fled here. She's 15 or 16 years old and is also good-looking. Moreover, she wasn't willing to be a concubine and was forcefully taken over by second young master. To get her, they even captured her mother and threatened her with her mother's life. All the signs indicated that this was most likely his daughter and wife." Gu Dajiang panicked. It wasn't so easy for him to find out anything else. However, at this moment, his wife and daughter were forced to become concubines and had no way of asking for help. He could not sit still. Gu Dajiang tried his best to sneak into the Xian residence. He was capable. It was not easy to enter the Xian family, but he found his way in. However, that was not the case at all. Chapter 456. Those three bastards. That person called Gu Yundong was indeed unwilling at first, but her mother was not captured by the second young master. Her mother voluntarily helped the second young master trick her daughter into coming in. Moreover, concubine Gu had only been in the Xian residence for a day, but she was already bewitched by the riches inside and willingly became the concubine of the second young master of the Xian residence. Gu Dajiang did not find out about this at first. As a complete stranger, he anxiously asked around for Gu Yundong's residence. After hiding in the Xian residence for a day, he was discovered. As it happened, it was the wife of the second young master of the Xian family, who was the daughter of the current Prefecture magistrate of Wanqing Prefecture. When she saw Gu Dajiang, she also received news that this person was getting close to concubine Gu. Second young madam smiled. After sizing Gu Dajiang up, she suspected his relationship with concubine Gu. "I heard that concubine Gu has a father. You're so concerned about her. Could you be her father?" Gu Dajiang immediately denied it. Seeing this, second young madam became even more certain. "Why are you nervous? Are you afraid that he'll use you to threaten concubine Gu?" Gu Dajiang refused to admit it even more badly. However, Regardless of whether second young madam was really certain or just in a bad mood, she said, "If you admit your relationship with concubine Gu, they'll let you go. If you don't admit it, you're a thief who barged into my Xian manor." When she said this, her eyes turned sharp. She directly said to the guard of the Xian family, "Break his fingers. This is the price for daring to break into the Xian residence." Gu Dajiang didn't even have time to explain before his fingers were pressed to the ground. The guard knocked him over with a stick. He fell back in pain, but a maid behind him poured a hot teapot on him. In an instant, he was so hot that his entire body convulsed and his shoulders immediately blistered. However, his torture was not over yet. Someone had told Concubine Gu. Concubine Gu brought second young master over and said that second young madam had deliberately found someone to impersonate her father to ruin her reputation. Only then did Gu Dajiang realize that he had mistaken her for someone else. Concubine Gu wasn't his daughter. Although her family had fled here, they had fled here when their ancestors were still alive. Second young master naturally could not reprimand second young madam. He was already in the wrong for taking a concubine. However, Concubine Gu was his new favorite, and she was still new. He had to stand up for her, right? Hence, he pushed all the blame to Gu Dajiang. "Why are you dressed like this again? I have something to do outside. It's more convenient to dress like this." Gu Yundong helped her up and asked, "How are you?" "I don't know why, but my legs seem to have been hit by something." The waiter turned his head and looked, but he didn't find any stones. "It hurts a little. I think you should sit over there and rest first." But he glanced awkwardly at the tray in his hand. Gu Yundong smiled. "They'll send it to you." "Huh?" The waiter was surprised. "Aren't you going out?" "I don't have anything urgent to do. I'm just delivering tea. It'll be done soon. Which room should I send it to?" As Gu Yundong spoke, she had already accepted the tray.